The manhwa starts with our female lead walking down the aisle. She looks at the flowers, but her mind drifts to the people in the room. Half of them are gangsters, and the other half are just pretending to be noble. She then focuses on the hand holding hers, thinking about how it's the same hand that hurt her mom and herself. She grips it tightly, making her father uncomfortable. She thinks to herself that she chose marriage over not existing at all. At least it's only for 3 years, and then she can endure it. Hye-jin walks into Peace Pharmacy, ready to start her day. She puts on her lab coat and gets everything set up. Miss Lee comes in, and after they greet each other, Miss Lee starts talking about a guy she saw in front of the elevator while parking her car. She describes him as looking like a gangster. To her, he seemed kind of cool, but also really scary. She felt like her life might be in danger if he decided to hit her. Just then, the same guy walks in and heads straight to Hye-jin's desk. He says something about her having a nice place to hide. Hye-jin tells him to come back later because she's busy working, but he grabs her by the hair and doesn't listen to her when she tells him to let go. He asks if she's going to run away again. Miss Lee tells him to let go or she'll report him, but he insists she put down her phone or he'll break her fingers. Scared, Miss Lee quickly puts her phone down. He then introduces himself as Hye-jin's older brother and says he's just talking to his sister, so Miss Lee doesn't need to worry about them. He adds that if she wants to shut down her business, she should just report him. Hye-jin tells Miss Lee that she's fine and will be back soon, and then she leaves with her brother. Outside the pharmacy, Hye-jin's brother is still holding her hair tightly. She scratches his wrist to try to get him to let go. As he raises his hand to hit her, she grabs his bleeding wrist and tells him he hasn't changed at all. He still doesn't respect women. He responds by throwing insults at her. When her brother confronts her about abandoning their family, Hye-jin asks him to be clear about what he wants. He says he needs her help, but she tells him to get out of her face if he's just going to talk nonsense. She thinks to herself that if he keeps this up, everyone, including their mom and dad, might be in danger. Hye-jin hasn't been in touch with her family for 9 years, ever since she started college. She decided to leave behind the gangster world and focus on finding herself. It hasn't been easy, but she has managed to endure it. Her grandfather was well known across the country. Back then, one of his colleagues bought a piece of land with plans for construction. He asked Hye-jin's grandfather for help. After buying the land and building on it, the colleague kicked out all the hard-working laborers. Essentially, he was a gangster who worked in the service industry. Hye-jin's father was different from her grandfather. Instead of staying in the same line of work, he chose to jump into the construction industry. He was tired of being just a small player for MK Construction and wanted something more. He made a name for himself and started his own company, which he named Ganghan Construction. This new company did really well, just like MK Construction. Both companies grew into big, successful businesses, but at their core, they were still part of the same gangster world, just dressed up as corporate firms. Over the years, MK Construction and Ganghan Construction often clashed over the same pieces of land. Their disputes turned into fierce battles that resulted in many lives being lost. This violent conflict became a major story in the news and was talked about by society for a long time. For more than 20 years, they managed to keep their rivalry under control, which helped keep the situation relatively stable. They never developed a close relationship, but they maintained their separate territories. However, things changed when a new organization entered the scene. This new construction company, supported by foreign investors, started to push into the territories of both MK Construction and Ganghan Construction. Their arrival disrupted the long-standing rivalry and created new challenges for both companies. To prevent the situation from getting worse, the leaders of MK Construction and Ganghan Construction decided to join forces. They threatened each other and agreed to form an alliance through a marriage between their son and daughter. The deal was that neither side would show any violence during the marriage, and that both families would work together to get rid of the new construction company. They also promise to maintain their alliance throughout the marriage. Hye-jin's mother begs her to endure the situation, saying that if she can just put up with it for 3 years, it will be worth it. Hye-jin thinks to herself that it's just a marriage, and there's no need to cry about it. Her brother then says that marriage isn't a big deal, and that she can marry a normal guy when she's older. He agrees with their dad and questions why she's making a fuss. Every time Hye-jin thinks about her father, she clenches her fists. She grits her teeth whenever she hears her brother's nonsense, and calls herself a fool for coming back to this difficult situation. She wonders when she'll get to meet the groom. When they arrive at the Grand Hotel, Kim Moo Kang introduces himself and extends his hand for a handshake. Hye-jin thinks this is a bad impression and walks past him, introducing herself as well. He then pulls out a chair for her to sit, but she sees it as just a gangster's fake attempt at being polite. As they sit next to each other, Hye-jin asks about his brother, Mr. Kim Man-soo. He questions why she wants to know, and she simply says it's okay. Kim Moo Kang then asks what she thinks about the wedding being held at the Grand Hotel where they are sitting. Hye-jin hopes her opinion doesn't cause any problems and replies that it doesn't matter. He praises her for having a good personality since she isn't bothered by the venue. During their conversation, Hye-jin mentions that she's the kind of person who can cut ties with her family. Kim Moo Kang responds that a woman like a sword is attractive, but she retorts that a man who says that in front of a woman isn't very appealing. Kim Moo Kang sees Hye-jin as someone who fits him well. He says she's respectful, but also a bit distant. Hye-jin tells him to stop talking nonsense. When he mentions that he's 2 years younger than her, he reassures her that he will stay polite. He then asks if it's okay for him to call her by her name, and she says it is. Laughing, he refers to himself as her groom. Hye-jin reminds him that they are not married yet, but he says there's only 1 week left and he's looking forward to it. Knowing that gangsters usually dislike women like her, she intentionally says unlucky things, pretending to feel bad, but he just keeps laughing. While she's lost in her thoughts, he asks her if she's good in bed. After a moment of silence, she finally admits that she hates boring relationships between men and women. Kim Moo Kang says he wants to get to know her slowly and listens to what his future wife has to say. He stands up and extends his hand, asking if they can leave. Hye-jin tells him that her family mentioned he's a good person. She thinks to herself that he must be a considerate person who accepts unreasonable suggestions from others. Still holding out his hand, Kim Moo Kang asks if she's ever thought a man could be intimate with a woman he can't even hold hands with. Hye-jin can't deny it and adds that she doesn't want him to dislike her actions. He asks why he should accept this, and she doesn't have an answer. Hye-jin wants to hear everything from the person who will be her husband. When he asks if she's good in bed, she wants to show him right then and there how well she can do. However, he tells her not to worry about it. Hye-jin concludes that Kim Moo Kang is dangerous and different from her father and brother. Even though he is smiling, he has a somewhat dangerous aura. She realizes she was rude and acknowledges it in her thoughts. Hye-jin forgets that they are both in the same situation. She's been acting like she's the only victim forced into this marriage, and now she refers to him as a man who has been kind about her strange questions. She tells him that marrying a woman he doesn't love wouldn't have been as good as this situation. He responds by saying that he wasn't sold into the marriage, he chose to enter it willingly. Hye-jin realizes that her partner has changed just a day ago. Instead of the eldest, Kim Man-soo, she now has his younger brother, Kim Moo Kang. She wasn't curious about it before, but now she wants to know why the change happened. He tells her she's asking too soon. Hye-jin wonders if they've met before. She remembers seeing him and notes that, even though he's not very tall, his presence is memorable. Kim Moo Kang moves closer and says he hopes she remembers him. She expected their meeting to be a formal and emotionless confrontation, but she finds it hard to hide her feelings. She feels overwhelmed by the man in front of her. The next day is the wedding, and the bride's face looks far from happy. Even though she's wearing a stunning white wedding dress, she looks as depressed as a wilted lily. Both families have been busy preparing for the wedding all week. They've been coordinating guest lists to avoid inviting business partners who are enemies, checking the backgrounds of each other's bodyguards, and agreeing on what weapons to bring to the ceremony. As she tries on the wedding dress, Hye-jin wonders why any bride would be afraid of being attacked at her own wedding. When the dresser announces that the bride is ready, she opens the curtain. Kim Moo Kang sees her and says she looks pretty, asking his guards for their opinion. They agree that she looks beautiful. With embarrassment all over her face, she decides to keep the wedding dress. When Kim Moo Kang asks if she wants to try on another dress, she tells him she likes this one. Then Kim Moo Kang asks what she thinks of his suit. Hye-jin tells him to do whatever he likes because she doesn't care. But he insists that he wants to wear clothes chosen by his future wife. He says the suit looks good on him. The dresser compliments them, saying they are the best couple she has ever seen and thanks them for their business. Hye-jin thinks to herself that it's all just about money. They walk into another store where the salesperson greets them and says the accessories are ready based on the brand design Hye-jin mentioned. She looks at some rings, and the salesperson asks if she likes them. Hye-jin says yes. Hye-jin used to enjoy this kind of wealth before she cut ties with her family. She lived in the most expensive apartment in Gangnam Yeokland and had one of only 3 foreign cars in Korea. Her mother was Miss Korea, and her father believed the world ran on money and power, always insisting on only the finest things. Hye-jin was proud of owning it all. Kim Moo Kang then shows her a watch and asks if she likes it. Hye-jin wonders if it would be better suited as a necklace or earrings and confirms that it's fine. She isn't very impressed, feeling that everything seems excessive right now. While she's lost in her thoughts, Kim Moo Kang asks if she has a man in her life. Hye-jin answers yes. Noticing his reaction, she asks him if there's a problem. He questions if she's currently dating anyone, and she confirms again that she is. During her high school days, Hye-jin confessed her feelings to her senior, her first love. She told him she liked him, but he apologized, saying he wanted to focus on his studies. After that, she was ridiculed behind her back. People talked about her gangster family, saying she was creepy and that her brother would beat up anyone who got close to her. Her brother did end up beating up the boy, but not because of Hye-jin. It was because he had a problem that had been quiet for a while, and he said he felt an itch to use his fists. After that incident, no one wanted to make eye contact with Hye-jin, and her first love ended miserably. Even in college, the rumors didn't stop, and men quickly backed away from her. Kim Moo Kang asks if she is dating anyone else. Hye-jin tries to change the topic, reminding him they are there to choose a wedding ring. But Kim Moo Kang insists it's important to know before they get married. Hye-jin thinks that Kim Moo Kang is pretending to be gentle and friendly, but is showing his true colors now. She compares him to her father, who makes excuses for men and treats her mother poorly. She sees her father as a thug who tells women to be careful, but plays around with 3 women himself, just like her brother, who changes girlfriends whenever he wants. She asks Kim Moo Kang if he has a girlfriend. He says she is the only one he has. He then reminds her that their marriage is serious, not a game or a new romance. Hye-jin thinks to herself that she is risking her family's safety to fulfill this contract. Hye-jin warns Kim Moo Kang not to do anything stupid, like threatening or forcing her, because such actions won't affect her. Hearing this, he kneels in front of her, tells her she is appealing, and that she is his right choice. When she asks what he's talking about, he takes her hand and puts a ring on her finger. He says they should live well together and promises that he won't let a drop of water touch her hand. Hye-jin had once dreamed of getting a proposal from someone she loved, but she thought it was just a fantasy. She never imagined marriage would be part of her life. Yet here is Kim Moo Kang kneeling in front of her, with a shining ring on her finger, and making a childish promise about not letting water touch her hand. But she doesn't respond to his proposal. The storm on the wedding day is huge and expected because it's monsoon season. For Hye-jin, the heavy rain symbolizes the relationship between the two gangster families, MK Construction and Ganghan Construction. Their relationship is full of conflict, like a battle that has turned the whole area into a sea of blood. The news of the union between the two families makes headlines that morning, and the newspaper even calls it a metaphor for gangster Romeo and Juliet. To Hye-jin, it feels like she is just an actor in a comedy play. Today is Hye-jin's wedding day. She is sitting on the couch in her wedding dress when someone knocks on the door. She tells them to come in. It's Kim Moo Kang. She asks him about his bodyguards, and he says he sent them away. Then he asks her how many children they should have and how often they should be intimate. Hye-jin thinks it's not right to discuss such things through someone else, but Kim Moo Kang doesn't mind. In her mind, Hye-jin knows that she isn't interested in a long-term relationship or anniversaries, because she plans to end the marriage as soon as the 3 years are up. She wonders if Kim Moo Kang has unrealistic expectations. He says that since it's their wedding, they need to plan things for themselves. But Hye-jin sees this as just an arranged marriage where they live together. He asks if she snores at night, and she tells him not to ask. He says he sleeps well even if it's noisy. Hye-jin mentions that she doesn't like sharing a bed with other people, but Kim Moo Kang says it's important for couples to sleep in the same bed, even if they argue. Hye-jin asks who made the rule about couples sleeping in the same bed. Kim Moo Kang says it was their parents. Hye-jin replies that their parents' situation is different from theirs because their marriage wasn't arranged by a contract. Kim Moo Kang tries to convince her that there's no difference between their marriage and their parents' marriages. Hye-jin explains that their parents met and decided to marry, while they knew they were going to get married before even meeting each other. Kim Moo Kang then comments on how attractive her mouth is when she uses the word we, and Hye-jin looks at him in surprise. Although she finds Kim Moo Kang different from her brother, she still doesn't trust his smiling face. She tells him that she can't sleep with other people, but warns him not to touch her in any unwanted way. He assures her that he won't touch her unless she really wants him to and adds that such a condition can't be put into a contract because they are a couple. Hye-jin replies that it can be addressed with words. Kim Moo Kang asks if she thinks he would hit her. She says there shouldn't be any swearing or violence, but he responds that one can't predict the future. Her thoughts turn to her parents, and she feels a cloud of concern. Hye-jin remembers how her father used to deal with her mother. He would get angry and use excuses that didn't make sense. As a young girl, she would rush to protect her mother, but ended up getting hurt herself. She's not surprised by her brother's behavior since he grew up watching their father. She sees them both as thugs who use their fists before using words. Kim Moo Kang steps closer to her and wipes away her tears, saying he will never hurt her. His words seem sincere to her, and she thinks that even though she's not happy, being with him might not be such a bad thing. He tells her they can deal with everything later, and that it's never too late to make decisions in life. He adds that they will have plenty of time to spend together. The flowers at the wedding alone cost over 100 million. The banquet hall is packed with guests, half of whom are important figures and the other half are gangsters pretending to be high class. Hye-jin thinks about how strange it is that the same hand that hit her mother and herself is now holding hers as they walk down the wedding aisle. She tries not to think about it and focuses on the flowers. The whole thing feels surreal as she climbs up the stairs with Moo Kang's hand in hers. After a long ceremony, it's finally time for the vows. They exchange their vows and officially become a couple. When it's time to eat and drink, the atmosphere is lively and a bit chaotic. Hye-jin's father starts the conversation by saying Moo Kang doesn't look like anyone in his family, while Moo Kang's father remarks that the man who fathered his son-in-law must look like an old man. Hye-jin agrees with her father for the first time, noticing that Moo Kang's father's short stature and appearance don't seem to match Moo Kang at all. Instead, Moo Kang's older brother looks more like their father. Moo Kang's father then makes a comment about whether an ignorant man gave birth to the same idiot, referring to Hye-jin's brother, and adds that he'll leave his daughter-in-law out of it. This upsets Hye-jin's father, and he becomes furious, raising his hand to hit her. Her mother steps in to stop him. Her father then questions why his wife would interfere with what he's doing, and her mother apologizes. After that, the argument between the families turns the whole event into a mess. During the argument, they fight over names, status, and appearances. Hye-jin tells her brother to keep his hands off her brother-in-law, as they are getting into a fight. She offers Kim Man a sword, but Moo Kang stops her, saying it's their son's wedding. Kim Man apologizes as instructed by his father. Hye-jin notices that her father's expression shows he's unhappy with everything happening. She thinks about how her mother is like a trapped mouse when they get home, unable to speak due to her position. Hye-jin starts to wish the marriage would end after this sword fight. Even though she planned to stay for 3 years, she already feels like running away. Kim Moo Kang stands up, takes her hand, and announces that it's time for their flight. They start to leave the wedding venue. He tells her that Jeju Island will be fun and asks for her opinion on it. Their honeymoon destination is Jeju Island. Kim Moo Kang built a villa there with the first money he earned from his construction job. They walk onto a private plane, and as she sits down, she thinks about how her father, upset by the news, bought a private plane the following year. Already seated, Kim Moo Kang looks at her and asks if she is upset. She simply replies, no. She has a fear of heights, so she stays frozen in her seat until they arrive at Jeju Island. She asks if there are any family traditions they haven't talked about yet. Laughing, he says they need to get off the plane using parachutes. Then he asks if he can hug her, but she says no. Despite that, he takes her hand. Even though she didn't agree, she feels comfortable with his hand holding hers. Instead of pulling away, she lets him help her, as they hold hands tightly until the plane lands. As she tries to get off the plane, her leg hurts, and Kim Moo Kang offers to massage it. He even jokes that he could lick her toes, but she tells him not to touch her legs because they are dirty. She closes her eyes and lets him massage her leg. He tells her to sleep because there's a lot to do later. Hearing this, she quickly pulls her leg away, saying he shouldn't force her. As they step out, he puts his hand on her shoulder. He shows her the villa where they'll be staying and asks if she likes it. She walks away, saying she likes the wedding the most. Kim Moo Kang feels a bit embarrassed by her response. She thinks it's a nice cottage, but she feels it's a shame they are only staying for 2 days. She insists that 2 days is enough. They toast to their future, as Kim Moo suggests. While he means forever, she thinks their marriage will eventually end someday. As they walk along the shore, Kim Moo Kang keeps staring at her, and says it's great to be alone together. She tells him not to do anything weird. He steps closer, faces her, and holds her face with both hands, asking what she's talking about. He moves in to kiss her, but she calls his name and pushes him away. He says she's being weak and that calling his name makes him remember he can't do what he wants. He adds that she has another chance to change her mind. Even though he stares at her intensely, he backs off. She then asks about the bodyguards, noting that they followed her while she was alone. Kim Moo Kang tells her to get used to it, even if she doesn't like it. When she says she can live on her own, Kim Moo Kang tells her he knows she's been happy for the past 9 years and doubts she's really lived alone. She figures her father must have sent someone to follow her without her noticing. She realizes she was too naive not to see it and decides she needs to escape her current situation. Kim Moo Kang then tells her to stay by his side if she doesn't like it. She insists she knows how to protect herself, but he suddenly pulls her close, covering her mouth with his hand and lifting her off the ground. He asks what she would do if something like this happened to her. In response, she stomps on his leg hard and punches him in the chest. Standing upright, she mentions having 7 packs, and holding his chest, he stumbles back and falls to his knees. Seeing him on the ground, she calls his name and moves closer to help him. But before she can reach him, he pulls her down onto his lap. She ends up sitting on his knees as he sits on the ground. He then asks if she doesn't know she shouldn't leave her enemy until the very end. She complains that his jokes are making her heart race. He laughs and apologizes, then wipes sand off his face. She points out a scar below his eye and asks about it. The scar makes him look less impressive. The thugs and his father thought of it as a badge of honor. He then asks if she remembers the day he wore a helmet, saying he was shorter than her back then. When she was in her second year of high school, she arrives out of breath from running. She calls her brother, young Hye-jin, and tells him they should go back home. When he doesn't respond, she asks when he'll be home. It was the year she finished high school and became an adult. Her brother didn't go to college, instead, he just hung around asking strangers for money. In their house, if the oldest son isn't strong or responsible, their father blames their mother for not taking care of the family or teaching the kids properly. So she searches for him desperately, acting like someone who's lost their mind. When he tells her he'll come home when it's time, she explains that she's doing it for their mom. He asks if she can endure it for her, but she says she's out of money. When he demands the money she doesn't have, he gets angry and says he wouldn't have gotten anything even if she did. She moves closer and bites him hard on his lower leg. He screams as she keeps biting him, and when he raises his hand to hit her, someone kicks him from behind, making him fall on his back. She asks who the person is, since he's wearing a helmet. The person asks if she's okay and tells her to run while holding her hands. He explains that she needs to get her brother to go home. He walks over, grabs her brother, and hits his head against the wall. She begs him to stop, and just in time, a police car arrives. Her brother, Hye-jin, manages to escape. She helps the man up, asks if he's okay, thanks him for helping her, and tells him not to get involved in other people's problems. She's surprised to learn that he had a wound that day. He asks if it looks impressive, but she says she doesn't believe it. She remembers how skinny he was back then, and how his young voice disappeared. He feels it's a shame, because he would have sought revenge before her brother became prefect. She asks how he plans to get his revenge, and he wonders if he should make her pay 10 times for it. She thanks him, saying it's just words. She had thought the scar was from fighting, but now she realizes it saved her 11 years ago, and she feels guilty. Still touching the scar, he asks if they can stand up. He talks about being unsettled and alert, stretching out his hand and asking her to help him up, but she ignores him and walks away. She thinks about the scar on his face from getting involved in other people's problems, how he asked for help and she refused. She reflects on how cold she seems, not missing anyone and not caring about others' opinions, but she finds herself getting caught up in everything when she's with Moo Kang. As he takes a warm bath, he thinks about what happened at the shore. Meanwhile, she opens a bottle of Hennessy in the sitting room. She's been feeling nervous about their wedding night, and keeps thinking about how he tried to kiss her. That's why she asked to sleep in a separate room, and set rules against physical contact. She knows he won't force her, but she wonders how long this will last. She remembers his comments about touching things that make someone feel lustful, how he sucked her leg when she was hurt, and his desire to kiss her. She knows he's different from her and isn't pretending to be just a couple, he really wants to be one. She takes a sip of her drink, concluding that this isn't how she feels. He walks into the sitting room and approaches where she's sitting. As she turns to face him, her eyes meet his broad chest, and she notices a leopard tattoo running from his shoulder to his navel. He takes the drink from her and asks why she's drinking alone. He says she should wait for him, then takes a sip himself. She thinks that all gangsters must have leopard tattoos like his. He asks if she wants to touch it, but when she reaches out, she pushes him away. He pulls her closer, and she asks why he isn't wearing a shirt. He teases her, asking if she wants to take it off herself, but she reminds him that they agreed to avoid physical contact. He tells her he'll make her want it. He holds her by the waist and neck and moves his face closer to hers. As they start kissing, her thoughts get cloudy. Her mind feels like it's going to explode, and her legs go weak from feelings she's never felt before. She begs him to stop, wipes her lips, and wonders what kind of situation she's in. She thinks he's only focused on overpowering her and sees him as a dangerous man, almost like a wild animal. She thinks her first kiss was a mess. She reminds him again that they agreed not to have any physical contact. He asks if she's in a bad mood, and when she asks why he's asking, he says he loved it and was about to lose control. She throws a piece of clothing at him, and he adds that there's no way to explain it better. She wonders how it would feel if it were his body instead, because just a touch on his lips feels nice. He tells her he can't get a grip on himself, but still wants to go all the way with her because it's all he thinks about when they are together. His words are so direct that she wonders if she heard him right. She finds it ridiculous and thinks that if another woman were in her place, he'd probably say the same thing. He rests his head on her shoulder and apologizes for kissing her without asking. She reminds him that he always does what he feels like doing. He says he only wanted to sleep with her and that's why he made her feel nervous, but he doesn't regret it because he's dreamed about that moment. He also says it feels even better than he imagined. She wonders why Kim Moo says he enjoyed the kiss, and she admits that she enjoyed it a lot too. She had thought he didn't like it. He says he can't promise he won't touch her fingers, but he won't force her. If he can't resist the urge, he'll ask for her permission and try his best to make her feel the same way. She says she'll be upset, and doesn't want to do anything. She is actually speechless because of his touch. She wonders if he's found her weak spot again, and if she's being pulled into his emotions. Still holding her fingers, he begs her not to push him away. She asks if he will listen to her from now on. When he says he will, she tells him to put his shirt on, and he does as she says. Kim Moo sleeps on the couch while Hye-jin lies in bed. After a loud flash of lightning, she checks her phone and sees that it's 4:30. She's slept longer than she expected. She tells Kim Moo to move to the sofa in the living room. He tries to persuade her by saying they'll only hold hands while they sleep, but she reminds him of his promise to always listen to her. She adds that if he doesn't, she'll sleep on the sofa instead. As he leaves, he says he won't bother her anymore that day because she might get tired. From the wedding ceremony to the honeymoon, there has been a lot of emotional tension between them. As she thinks about what happened in the living room, she feels relieved that she asked him to leave. He asks if she is asleep, and when she turns to face him, he says he came in because he's afraid of the lightning. He says he came in because he's scared of lightning, and she agrees to let him stay just for tonight. She asks if he knows his face looks scary, and he responds with a surprised "really?" He then asks if he can hold her hand, calling her thick-skinned in a teasing way. She complains about the constant rain, and he wonders if she has somewhere to go once it stops. She says no and mentions that she likes staying in the villa all day. He then jokes about being hurt, because she said she's most satisfied just staying in the villa. She laughs and agrees that staying home all day in Jeju Island seems like a waste. When he suggests they visit a place he mentioned before, a farm nearby where he received a gift called Hwangtu, when he was 14, she can't remember him talking about it earlier. Hwangtu is his oldest friend, and he really wants to see him. He adds that Hwangtu is his wife, which she finds both embarrassing and wonderful. She thinks to herself that she won't pay much attention to Kim Moo Kang's sweet talk until she understands what marriage really means. To her, it feels like just a political marriage, and she worries that if there's no benefit, they might break up. She wonders why he is so clear, simple, and confident, and why he calls Hwang to his wife even with their kind of relationship. That night, she falls asleep without realizing it and dreams of a big panther. It has fierce golden eyes and a golden coat. She feels comfortable listening to its heartbeat and snuggles into its warm, soft chest. In the morning, Kim Moo is in the kitchen making breakfast. He asks Hye-jin if she prefers milk or soy milk, and if she likes her eggs fully cooked or semi-cooked. She tells him she likes soy milk and semi-cooked eggs. She mentions that it has been a long time since she had breakfast with someone. After taking a bite, she says it isn't as bad as she thought, and he tells her it's not just not bad, but actually delicious. Kim Moo explains how nice it is for her to live with him. He says that if there's thunder in the morning, he'll be right by her side, letting her rest her head on his arm and her leg on his waist. She then tells him that she thought he was like a doll. Outside the villa on a very sunny day, Kim Moo takes pictures of her, but she asks him to stop. When they arrive at their destination, Kim Moo introduces her to Hwang-tu. He pats Hwang-tu on the face and tells her that this is his wife, making the introduction casual and light. Hye-jin doesn't know much about horses, but she can tell that Hwang-tu is beautiful. She thinks Hwang-tu looks like Kim Moo because it seems like a wild animal. Kim Moo takes a photo of her, as she puts her head close to Hwang-tu's mouth. He watches her play with the horse and then tells her that he's never seen her smile so genuinely before. When she asks if there are fake smiles, he explains that there are teasing smiles, empty smiles, and smirks. He adds that she usually doesn't have any reason to smile like that. Even though leaving her stifling home to be alone was comfortable and freeing, she struggles to make it through a day. Kim Moo promises to make her smile more often from now on and to put a ring on her finger. She says that the only reason she smiled after hearing that was because of the beautiful weather. The 3 days and 2 nights of their honeymoon go by quickly. On the plane, Hye-jin sips her tea. She no longer has time to feel afraid of flying. She reflects on how the trip was happy, the last flight was uneventful, and the peaceful time during the storm. She feels comfortable now, even though she thinks the next destination seems disgusting and gloomy. When they arrive, her mother welcomes her new son-in-law, Kim Moo, while he greets her father and mother-in-law. Her dad asks if they are back. Hye-jin is upset by the way her dad is treating Kim Moo. Kim Moo bows deeply and asks her dad to accept his respect. Her dad agrees, but Hye-jin wonders why Kim Moo is bowing so much, thinking it's not normal. She is frustrated that her dad sold her off just to keep his gang. Her brother walks in and suggests that she should also bow to greet their dad. He questions where she's been and why she's making fun of their father. He sits down and keeps insisting that Hye-jin should bow, saying Kim Moo doesn't need to worry about her. He adds that it's enough to wish for a long life, just to see her bowing. Even though she never wanted to be there because of her biological parents, she feels surprisingly calm at the moment. Annoyed, she tightly squeezes her palm. Kim Moo decides to bow twice on her behalf. This makes her brother and father upset, and Hye-jin is surprised by their reaction. Kim Moo decides to bow twice for her, saying "Dear Dad," and wishing him a long life. Her dad then questions if she's crazy and wonders why anyone would need her. Hye-jin is puzzled about why Kim Moo is matching her stubbornness. Kim Moo explains that being a couple means sticking together through everything, even if it's tough. He says he will always support her, and won't force her to do anything she doesn't want to do. He also promises that no one else will force her to do something she doesn't want to do, and that they will be happy together. This is the first time she's seen him do this, and it makes her father's face turn red with anger. Her brother sighs beside her, and her mother just watches the scene, unable to close her mouth. It feels like a familiar situation. Kim Moo calls her over and stretches out his hand. She places hers in his, feeling that it's the first time someone is really on her side and giving her a voice in this house. Holding her hand, they leave her family's house and head to his home. His mom and dad greet her with smiles. His mom asks if the trip was fun, and she says yes. Even though she still feels a bit stressed in her new home, everything goes smoothly. At dinner, she sees the food and knows that his mom must have been a bit worried because of her arrival. His father wants to start a conversation, but his mom suggests he wait because their daughter-in-law must be tired. She adds that Hye-jin should just be herself. Hye-jin feels that the warm welcome at Kim Moo's house is a bit strange but comforting. She thinks about how boring and sad mealtimes were with her family, compared to the warmth and love she feels at Kim Moo's house. She hopes that one day this warmth will be her new reality, and wishes she could get used to it. Feeling very tired, she asks if she can go home now. As they leave Kim Moo's family's house, she asks if they can go home. When he asks if she means his home, she says she isn't ready to live with someone else yet. Even though he's a good man and very romantic, she finds it hard to live together since they just got married recently. She explains that she doesn't hate the idea of living with him, but she's sorry and needs time to adjust. Her workplace is in Gyeonggi, so commuting is also a bit of a problem. He reminds her of his promise not to force her to do anything she doesn't want to and agrees to take her home. However, she asks if he can stay with her for the weekend at her place. He accepts defeat again, even though he still looks a bit angry. From the balcony, she waves at him and tells him to hurry back. He winks at her and blows her kisses, making her laugh. As she looks at the full moon, she thinks about how beautiful the night is. Back in the shop, she feels a bit excited, but she isn't sure if it's just because it's been a while since she's been at work. What's really on her mind is the image of Kim Moo Kang from yesterday. She keeps thinking about how his eyes shone brightly, like street lamps, and how he shaped his mouth to say good night. Dr. Lee walks in with a happy face and is pleased to see Dr. Hye-jin. She asks about the trip, and Hye-jin tells her that it was very enjoyable. Dr. Lee is glad to see her, and says she looks even more beautiful than before. She asks if Hye-jin is really okay, even though she doesn't seem too bad. Dr. Lee brings up how her brother mentioned the sudden marriage a few days ago, and how surprised she was since Hye-jin hadn't been seeing anyone before. She wonders why she didn't get an invitation to the wedding. Hye-jin explains that she was worried whether it was really a marriage, and apologizes for making Dr. Lee worry. She adds that she didn't send an invite, because only close relatives were invited to the ceremony. Dr. Lee then comments that Hye-jin looks much better now, so she should be able to relax. She really wants to keep her life a bit normal, but to do that, she feels she'll need to lie more. She feels overwhelmed because things have been so busy. As she walks home, she remembers the texts from Dr. Lee asking when she would be back while she was on her honeymoon. Dr. Lee mentioned that Hye-jin must have been very tired being alone. She checks her phone but sees there are no calls or texts from Kim Moo Kang, and she's confused about who keeps asking her to come back to their house. As she walks home, she notices someone following her. She wonders if it's Kim Moo's bodyguard or someone sent by her family. She decides to walk faster, even though she knows the person could have hurt her if that was their intention. Still, she feels uneasy. When she gets close to her building, she sees light coming from her room window. She takes a deep breath and quietly opens the door. Inside, someone asks if she's back home and tells her to come in, saying she must be tired. She moves closer quickly and hits him on the neck. He falls to the ground, and she stays in position, holding him down. She asks who he is, and he calls her name. She realizes it's Kim Moo. She then questions how he got in, and if he had his men force her door open. She reminds him of his promise not to do things she doesn't like and asks if those were just empty words. He stays silent, so she decides to leave. He grabs her hand and says a thief broke into her house. He suggests they have dinner first before he explains what happened. While preparing dinner, he tells her that he got a message and his driver suggested they go to her house because they heard about the break-in. When they arrived, he showed the police his passport and their wedding photos to prove he's her husband. After getting inside, he checked around and figured the thief must have targeted her because they thought someone lived there. He says it seems like a warning that someone could break in at any time to threaten her. He adds that he cleaned up her house and is making dinner now. Looking at the plate of food, she asks how he got it. He says he bought it at the market because presentation is really important when cooking. She takes a bite of the noodles, then apologizes. He asks if the food is bad or if she just doesn't like Italian food, and says he can make soy sauce for her. She explains that her apology was for getting angry earlier, and he tells her that's understandable. He admits he should have told her about the thief earlier, because he didn't want to scare her, and he apologizes for not letting her know sooner. While doing the dishes, he asks if anything was stolen. She says there's nothing worth stealing in her house. He then asks if she saw any strangers around her office while she was coming and going. He asks if she noticed anyone suspicious in town while she was at the office. She says she didn't, but she did notice someone following her on her way to work and back. She turned around but didn't see anyone. He then reveals that those people were his and he told them to follow her without being seen so she wouldn't be bothered. He adds that, given what happened today, he will replace all of his people. She tells him it's not necessary. She explains that having a bodyguard might mean the thief wasn't just after stealing something, but that it could be something more serious. He agrees that it is possible. Kim asks if they can go to bed, and she tells him the bed isn't very big. He quickly says he'll stay outside instead. He explains that he can't just leave her alone because someone broke into her house so quickly, and they might still be around. Also, if he went home in this situation, he wouldn't be able to sleep. As he grabs his shirt from the wardrobe, she asks if he really plans to stay outside her house. He says yes and that he'll park somewhere she can see from the window. Before he leaves, he tells her to call him if she feels scared. But then she calls him back and tells him to stay the night at her place. In the bathroom, she thinks to herself that she could handle a thief, but if the intruder was a gangster, it would be too much for her to handle. Thinking about Kim staying outside for so long makes her feel a bit awkward, especially since she's staying in this house for the next 4 years. While she's thinking, she hears him knock on the bathroom door. He tells her he needs to go out for a minute to buy some underwear and clothes to change into. He also says she shouldn't be scared while he's gone. She feels anxious because she can't tease him about it, and she thinks he must be doing this so she won't feel uncomfortable. She finds him stubborn, but also really dedicated to small details. It seems a bit funny, but being with him makes her feel safe. He comes back soon after she finishes, changes into his new clothes and underwear, and jumps on the bed. She tells him to make use of it. He says he wants to kiss her, but she tells him to be quiet. He keeps going, saying the way she says his name sounds so appealing. She asks him why he didn't refuse when she offered him the bed, wondering if he likes it that much. He admits that he does, and he loves her scent too. Then he asks if she wants to join him on the bed, but quickly says he was just kidding and that she should sleep. She lies on a cloth on the floor, and says she'll add some extra security to the front door tomorrow. For now, he just needs to keep watch for the night. He touches her forehead and asks if she's worried about him. He tells her not to be, saying he has everything planned out. When she asks what his plan is, he covers her face with his fingers and tells her to go to sleep since she needs to wake up early. The police ask if he's really young Hye-jin's husband and why she's living there alone. He checks his ID and confirms he is her husband. Kim Moo says they will be reunited soon and looks upstairs. He turns out to be even more stubborn and unreasonable than she had expected. As they walk, Mr. Kim Moo Kang offers to take her home, which she finds surprising. She asks if he's not going to the company today. He casually replies that he's still on vacation after getting married, and adds that it's nice being a CEO with a bit of free time. He even offers to carry her bag, saying it's no trouble at all. She laughs and teases him, saying that as an ordinary worker, it's a little annoying to see a CEO act so casually. This makes him chuckle, clearly enjoying the playful banter. Despite the light-hearted moment, the ordinary day feels different now. The usually quiet road she walks alone on feels strange with him walking beside her. The presence of someone else changes her familiar routine, making it seem unusual and a bit unsettling. When they finally arrive at the office building, she turns to him with a sense of urgency and asks him to go home. She's puzzled by his stubbornness and questions why he insists on staying with her. He gives her a reassuring smile, and says he just wants to make sure she gets inside safely before he leaves. His insistence makes the situation even more unusual, and she has to accept that for now, this ordinary day has turned into something quite different with him by her side. He responds with a gentle smile, saying he just wants to see her safely inside before he goes. He reassures her that he won't be in the way. With that, they both enter the building together. As they walk in, she greets Dr. Lee, who is busy at her desk. She leans in close to Dr. Lee, whispering with a touch of curiosity, "I think I've seen him before. Do you know if he's your boyfriend?" Before Dr. Lee can respond, Kim steps forward and, with a friendly but firm gesture, says, "He's not just a boyfriend. He's my husband." He then pulls her closer to him in a warm embrace. Dr. Lee looks surprised but then smiles, inviting Kim to come in and have a cup of coffee before he leaves. She adds with a hint of relief, "I was a bit anxious about getting married so quickly. But I have to admit, I didn't expect my husband to be this handsome." She chuckles softly, feeling a bit more at ease now that Kim is here. He thanks her as he takes the coffee, and she immediately starts asking him questions. She wants to know what he does for a living, why he's not at work today, and if his house is close by. As she's asking these questions, her phone rings. It's Hye-jin calling. She feels a bit uneasy, wondering if she's asked too many questions too quickly. He reassures her that it's perfectly fine and actually tells her he's grateful that his wife has such a considerate colleague. She mentions that she thinks his wife is a really special person, and he agrees, saying he's always thankful for her. Curious, she then asks how he and Hye-jin met. He smiles and shares that Hye-jin was his first love. He explains that Hye-jin and her father came to his grandfather's funeral many years ago. He was struck by how impressive she was even back then. Hye-jin is in high school when it all happens. One day, he begins to tell the story of a time when a man died, and it led to a huge fight among the adults. He talks about how everyone started arguing, and how things quickly got out of hand. He remembers the shouting, the anger, and the tension in the air. In the middle of all the chaos, he spots her. She stands out to him, even though everything around them is so chaotic. He describes her eyes as bright and full of emotion, like they could see right through him. Her voice is soft but strong, and even with all the noise, he can hear her clearly. At that moment, he doesn't know it yet, but looking back now, he realizes it was love at first sight. As time goes by, the girl he saw that day becomes someone he can't forget. Every time he thinks about that day, her face is the first thing that comes to mind. She becomes special to him in a way he never expected. At first, Hye-jin can't recall all the details of that day. The memory is a bit blurry because so much is happening all at once, but as he continues talking about it, the memories come back to him more clearly. He remembers the sounds, the smells, and the feelings of that chaotic day. He remembers the man who died, the fight that broke out, and most importantly, he remembers her. The more he talks about it, the more vivid the memories become, and he can see everything as if it's happening all over again. He realizes that even though it was a difficult and frightening day, meeting her made it unforgettable in a completely different way. She brought a sense of calm and hope amidst the chaos, and that's something he holds on to. As he shares his story, he understands how deeply she has impacted him, and how that moment has stayed with him all these years. Even though they were surrounded by turmoil, seeing her was like finding a light in the darkness, and it's a memory that remains etched in his heart. There's a knock on the door, and Dr. Lee welcomes the customer inside. Kim Moo says goodbye to Hye-jin, telling her that he will come to pick her up later. Hye-jin watches him leave, feeling a bit uneasy but trying to focus on her day. As Dr. Lee attends to the customer, giving her some medicine and chatting with her, a memory suddenly comes to Hye-jin's mind. It's like a scene from a movie playing in her head, so vivid and clear. She remembers it was the funeral of a gangster, a day that should have been about mourning and paying respects. Instead, out of nowhere, a big argument starts. The tension in the room rises quickly, and voices get louder. People start shouting, and before anyone can stop it, the argument turns into a violent fight. The memory of that day is sharp and detailed. Hye-jin recalls how the funeral floor becomes a mess, with chairs overturned and people shoving each other. Blood is everywhere. She can see it clearly in her mind's eye, the red standing out starkly against the dull colors of the funeral setting. Someone even gets cut with a blade, and the sight of all that blood makes her stomach turn. The chaos of that day, the screams, the sound of fists hitting flesh, and the sight of people she knew turning on each other, it all makes a deep impression on her. Hye-jin's feelings about gangsters changed dramatically after that day. The sight of the violence and the blood makes her hate gangsters even more. She can't understand why they have to bring their fights and anger into such a solemn occasion. As she stands there in Dr. Lee's office, the memory is so strong that it feels like she is back at that funeral. She can almost hear the shouts and feel the fear she felt then. The whole place feels like a nightmare, and the memory of it is still very vivid in her mind. The scene is so intense that it leaves a lasting impression on her, making her feel a deep sense of anger and hatred toward the gangsters who caused all the trouble. In the evening, just as he promised in the morning, Kim comes to pick Hye-jin up. He takes her hand and suggests they go out for dinner. As they walk, she starts to wonder how much he really understands her. She also questions herself, wondering how well she understands him. When they arrive at the restaurant, they sit next to each other. Kim talks about how well she's eating and mentions again how beautiful she is. When they get to her place, she reminds him of what she said earlier about him dropping her off in front and then leaving. But Kim insists he needs to see her go into her room to feel all right. She brings up the fact that his bodyguards follow her everywhere, and he laughs it off. She thanks him for the day, saying he should go home as she opens her door, and firmly tells him that he can't stay at her place for the night. Kim says good night, but she can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. The previous day, Kim insisted on guarding the front of the house. Now, as she stands there staring at him, he opens the door to the room opposite hers. She asks him what he's doing, but he doesn't answer her question. Instead, he just walks into the opposite room, saying he'll see her in the morning. She watches him go, feeling a mix of confusion and curiosity about why he's staying so close by. Despite her questions, he seems determined to keep an eye on her, making her wonder what exactly is going on and why he feels the need to be so protective. As she goes into her own room, she can't help but think about his actions and what they might mean. They stand in the grey corridor, the atmosphere tense. She waits for an explanation, her eyes searching his face. He just looks at her in silence, his expression unreadable. Eventually, he mentions something about a housewarming party, trying to lighten the mood, but she isn't having it. She pushes for answers, determined not to let him dodge the question. Her mind flickers back to the morning, remembering the scene, people moving luggage. The realization begins to settle in, and she falls silent, waiting for him to fill in the gaps. When he confirms what she's been fearing, it's like a cold wave washes over her, and she can feel sweat start to form on her skin. He calmly tells her that he moved into the house today, and asks if this is what she wanted to talk about so urgently. The way he says it makes it sound so casual, like it's no big deal, but she can't believe what she's hearing. She looks at him with wide eyes, almost accusingly, as if trying to make sense of it all. Did he really chase the others away just so he could take over this place? He doesn't flinch under her gaze, keeping his voice even as he explains that there was no need for any force. He claims he handled everything peacefully and adds that the person who was living here even thanked him, saying they felt lucky and were actually happy with how things turned out. The way he says it, so matter-of-factly, makes her feel uneasy. It's like he doesn't see anything wrong with what he's done. Her mind races, trying to piece together the events of the day. Earlier, she had noticed someone named Hugo, who had appeared with an unusually happy expression, almost too happy. Now, it all makes sense. The owner from across the street had just come by yesterday to introduce themselves and say hello. Everything had seemed normal then, but now she's standing here, feeling like the ground has shifted beneath her feet. He notices her discomfort and almost seems to tease her, pointing out that maybe she's upset because a regular person moved out, and someone strange moved in instead. His words are light, but there's an edge to them, like he's testing her reaction. She doesn't back down, though, and asks if he's admitting to being a weirdo. Instead of answering, he leans closer and rests his head on her shoulder, a gesture that feels both intimate and a bit intrusive. He asks her to just look at him, but she tries to push him away, reminding him of all the people he's sent to watch over her. He's persistent, though, and admits that while he doesn't want to bother her, he can't seem to leave her alone. There's something in his voice, a mix of frustration and something deeper, that makes her pause. He takes her hand gently, threading his fingers through hers, and speaks again, this time more softly. He tells her that it bothers him that all those other people get to see her every day, but he doesn't. It's not fair, he says, and she can hear the quiet longing in his words. It's like he's trying to make her understand something he can't quite put into words. She feels the tension between them, this strange pull that she can't quite explain, and she doesn't know what to say, so she just stands there, letting his words hang in the air. She's surprised when he suddenly lowers his gaze in that familiar, seductive way. Her mind races as she realizes that Kim Moo Kang has probably been waiting for this moment for a long time, and now, somehow, she's the one who's brought him to this point. The next morning, the ringing of her phone pulls her out of sleep. It's Kim Moo Kang on the line, his voice warm and cheerful as he asks if she slept well. He mentions that he's already prepared breakfast and invites her to join him. With a sigh, she gets out of bed, telling him she's on her way. She steps out of her room and heads into another, greeting him with a quiet good morning. It's only a short walk, just 2 big doors separating her place from his, yet it feels like a small journey every time. When she arrives, she's greeted by the sight of a table covered in food. She raises an eyebrow and asks if he really prepared all this so early in the morning. He smiles and sets down 2 plates, one with salad, the other with toast, on the table. With a casual shrug, he tells her it didn't take long, just a few minutes to put everything together. She bites into a sandwich and can't help but moan in delight. The taste is incredible, better than she expected, and she tells him so, praising how good it is. Ever since he moved into the house opposite hers, Kim Moo Kang has taken it upon himself to make sure she's never bored or lonely. He calls her every morning, making sure she's awake and often insisting that she has breakfast before starting her day. At noon, he brings her a packed lunch, even taking it to the pharmacy where she works. And in the evenings, he prepares her favorite soup, waiting patiently for her to come home so they can share a meal together. It's become a routine, one she didn't ask for but has slowly gotten used to. Each day, he's there, making sure she's taken care of in ways big and small. It's as if he's woven himself into the fabric of her daily life, making it hard to imagine her days without him now. As she sits there, savoring the breakfast he's made, she can't help but think about how easily he's made his presence a constant, comforting part of her life. She comes back looking tired and announces she's back. He's already at the door, waiting with a smile, and says, "Good job. Tonight's dinner is soybean soup with tally added." She's a bit surprised and wonders if she's married or if she somehow hired a helper who's really good at cooking. As they start eating, he casually mentions that they are like a married couple. She pauses and thinks to herself, *a married couple, that sounds kind of dreamy. Out loud, she says, maybe like a neighbor's cousin couple. He laughs and asks, isn't that just another way to describe a couple? She starts wondering if there are even more ways to describe what they have. Things like a marriage contract between a husband and wife, or a weekend couple come to mind. Even though their relationship is a bit unusual, the more time they spend together, the more they really do seem like a real couple. She thinks to herself that sometimes, to forget sadness and pain, they end up losing even the perfect moments of happiness. She realizes that even if someone is erased from their mind, love isn't something that can be easily erased. Those who are lucky enough to forget even their own mistakes might be blessed in a way, but she knows that love lingers no matter what. Then she says, Moo Kang, as if the name suddenly popped into her head. I completely forgot about that day. He looks at her, a bit curious, and asks, that day. She nods and says, the first time we met. It was at the funeral home. He raises an eyebrow, and asks if it was her grandfather's funeral. She sips her soda and begins to remember. There were a lot of delinquents there. Among all the sinister-looking elders, there was a girl around his age who stood out. Her face clearly showed that someone forced her to be there. She sighs and says that she remembers it now. He nods thoughtfully and says maybe it's because he really hates delinquents. They both start thinking back to that funeral. She remembers wondering why everyone there seemed so happy. It was a funeral, after all. Did they really come there to have fun? He mentions that his dad made a huge fuss about it, saying those were the kinds of things he shouldn't learn. She can picture his dad, gripping the collar of a guest wearing a tux, insulting the man, and asking if he was looking at him. The whole scene was a mess, with trouble brewing between people just sitting nearby. It was like everyone with the same bad attitude had gathered in one place. A small argument turned into a big fight, and it only got worse when someone pulled a knife out of their jacket. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Suddenly, the lights went out, throwing everything into chaos. People started yelling, "Where did the light go? What's happening? Who did that?" She remembers how she turned on the light, and calmly pointed out that the person was already dead. Someone in the crowd snapped back, calling her a little brat, completely missing the gravity of what just happened. The whole situation was chaotic, and now, looking back, it feels like something out of a bizarre dream. She's afraid that the deceased will be lonely, so she's thinking about following him. He looks at her and says that he fell in love with her at that exact moment. He still can't forget the first time he saw her. She raises an eyebrow and says, "Really? There are so many memories I want to forget. That day is one of them. I'd rather forget all the days before I turned 20, the days when I couldn't live the way I wanted." He quietly listens and then says that in that memory, he might have shown up in her life once or twice. She shrugs and says, "So what? Even if you did." He gently presses their foreheads together, telling her it's okay if she wants to forget about it. Then, without saying another word, he kisses her softly, whispering afterward that it's fine because he remembers everything. He pulls her down onto the couch, and they kiss again. But this time, as they are close, he says, "But, Hye-jin, you shouldn't forget the things that happened after we met." In that moment, he's thinking, Mia's Wyak, please let me keep this memory. Just this one. The main lead says something about the CEO being messy, which makes Hye-jin groan in her sleep. As she starts to wake up, she wonders where she is. She sees a packed suitcase next to a red couch and frowns. Turning around, she spots Moo Kang on the phone, his hair falling over his forehead as he glances at her. Realizing what's happening, she thinks, so that's it. Today is their weekend, and they are at their newlywed home in Pyeongchang-dong. He gently pats her back into the covers, telling her she can sleep more. After getting up from the bed, he heads to the walk-in closet. Hye-jin kicks off the covers and follows him, resting against the door. She asks why he's going to work on a Sunday, and if something happened. He's sorting through his corporate shirts and explains there's something he needs to check in person. She crosses her arms and remarks on how being a director isn't always as great as it seems. She shakes her head and walks away from the door, telling him he should do his best and that she's going to sleep a bit longer. She feels rushed and asks why he's still holding her. He grabs her hand and says it's just for a moment. He asks her to pick out a shirt for him. As she looks through the clothes, she tells him he'd probably do better finding it himself. Despite what she says, he notices she's still looking for a shirt for him. She pulls out a white dress shirt and a navy blue jacket that are hanging together on one hanger. She checks them out and decides to add a navy blue tie to the hanger. She wonders to herself if this tie goes well with the shirt and jacket. After a moment, she decides it looks good. He unties his robe and starts changing. She sits on a brown couch while he gets dressed. Turning to her, he calls out, "Hye-jin. She replies with a simple yes and a shrug. He hands her the tie and asks if she can put it on him. She smiles and says he's really acting like someone her age in moments like this. He asks her what he's usually like. As she ties his tie, she comments that he rarely smiles or talks and seems like he's not an easy person. She struggles with the knot, sweat trickling down her face, and asks where exactly she should position the strap. She also mentions that his way of speaking can be a bit intimidating. He starts laughing and shaking with amusement. She tells him to stay still because everything is getting messed up. Frowning at the tie, she wonders what's wrong with it. After finally tying it, she worries that she might have done it wrong and asks if she can try again, looking pale. He checks his watch, realizes how late it is, and grabs his jacket, saying he needs to leave. She calls out for him to wait and insists he should redo the tie before he goes. He smiles and continues to walk away, while she shakes her head and mutters, "Seriously." Kim Moo Kang steps out of the house and gets into a car driven by a dark-haired man with glasses. The driver greets him without turning around, but Kim Moo Kang can't stop thinking about the wife he left behind at home. Meanwhile, Hye-jin relaxes on the terrace and wonders what she should do now that Moo Kang isn't with her. As Kim Moo Kang tells the driver to go see the general manager, the one who messed up his weekend with Hye-jin, he arrives at a pastel-colored building with MK engraved on it. Inside, people are dressed in business clothes. He gets out of the car and walks into the building, heading for the elevator. A man in a black suit bows to him as he approaches and presses the button for the 15th floor. The man in the black suit asks if they should go directly to the construction project management department. Kim Moo Kang says they need to understand the situation first. When the elevator dings and the doors open, the two men step out. The man in the black suit replies, "Yes, yes. Is it really necessary to handle this now?" "As I know." Kim Moo Kang walks into a room with a grey carpet where two men are present. One man is sitting at a desk, while the other stands nearby. The standing man tells the seated general manager Choi that there's something urgent. Manager Choi looks up with a frown, his hand on his forehead, and his grey hair still messy. He asks what's going on. The standing man informs him that the director has arrived. Kim Moo Kang walks in with a relaxed smile, surprising the man standing by Manager Choi. In another part of the room, a woman in a pink pantsuit sits with the buttons of her coat undone, revealing a white dress shirt underneath. Kim Moo Kang comments on how everyone is still working hard on the weekend. He says he admires their dedication to the company, noting they work day and night. He then gestures toward Manager Choi and adds that the general manager is no different. The manager and Kim Moo Kang exchange looks without saying anything. The manager is the first to look away, sighing as he stands up and buttons his jacket. He then asks Kim Moo Kang what brings him here. Kim Moo Kang thinks to himself that he's here to stop any interference with Director Choi, but he knows he can't say that directly. They need to pretend they are on the same side until he has solid evidence. With these thoughts in mind, Kim Moo Kang smiles and says he just happened to pass by and decided to drop in. He pulls out a navy-covered book from his jacket and places it on the table in front of everyone. He comments that something urgent seems to have come up, and he's not aware of it. According to the weekly report, the design book review was supposed to be finished. The others in the room start to sweat a bit. Kim Moo Kang thinks to himself that this must be the proof of today's blueprint. The manager gives Kim Moo Kang a serious look, and Kim Moo Kang then suggests they talk in his office. They move to Kim Moo Kang's office, where they offer the director some tea. Kim Moo Kang sits in a chair with his arms crossed and a frustrated look on his face. Director Choi, who founded MKE&C, has a tough, no-nonsense attitude that fits the construction site. He's not just tough, he has a special talent for visualizing designs, which makes him a skilled leader. Director Choi had promised to be a strong support for Kim Moo Kang, but Kim Moo Kang quickly learned that his father's close aides are not easy to deal with. Kim Moo Kang knows it won't be simple to rely on them. He tells Director Choi to take good care of him. Director Choi, who started the company and has hands-on experience, sees Kim Moo Kang as someone new to the scene, almost like a kid who doesn't understand how things work. Kim Moo Kang thinks to himself that Director Choi must be smiling like he knows nothing about the situation. He tells Director Choi that the design book isn't a big issue, and asks if he can understand it as a minor problem. Director Choi responds that issues like these are common in big businesses, and that they signal the end of the project. Kim Moo Kang wonders if there's a problem he's not being told about. He mentions that urban development projects are tough, to which Director Choi replies that making money in the first place is difficult. Kim Moo Kang agrees. He thinks to himself that's exactly why he avoided urban redevelopment projects. They involve many stakeholders with conflicting interests, and they don't do much to improve a tough image. He realizes he can't openly tell Director Choi that he dislikes the tough, aggressive side of the business. However, if it involves the design book, he feels confident using his skills to handle it. With a smile, Kim Moo Kang acknowledges that he knows Director Choi is dealing with many issues. Director Choi looks at him sharply, and says it's his job to handle those problems. He mentions that it's just a simple check, so Kim Moo Kang shouldn't worry too much. Kim Moo Kang laughs and says that design is his area of expertise, hoping Director Choi will trust him. He thinks to himself that if Director Choi still refuses to make any changes after this, it will be clear there's a serious issue with the design book. Director Choi's back stiffens as Kim Moo Kang's words sink in. He stands up and asks why he should follow Kim Moo Kang's decisions. Kim Moo Kang smiles and says he's just thankful for Director Choi's trust. Annoyed, Director Choi storms out of the office, muttering under his breath about Kim Moo Kang being a cheeky child. A man in a black suit appears next to Kim Moo Kang and mentions that there are likely many people saying Kim Moo Kang is trying to take over Director Choi's position and pressure him. Kim Moo Kang stretches his neck and says he needs to assert his position, otherwise, things won't get done properly. The man in the suit says that's all he wanted to know, but Kim Moo Kang interrupts, saying he needs to get a blueprint. The man's face goes pale as he asks if it's the design book. With a grin, Kim Moo Kang confirms it and says he will review it himself. The man remembers how bulky the paperwork is and mentions that it would fill about 10 paper boxes. Kim Moo Kang then asks if the man can show him the way to the design book. Kim Moo Kang thinks that no matter what the issue is, the company is his responsibility, and it might take a few days to fix. The man in the suit says they should head there now and he'll handle things from there. Kim Moo Kang takes off his jacket and gets to work. His phone rings, and when he answers, someone on the other end mentions his title and says that after dinner, his wife took a break and went to their house in Gyeonggi-do. Kim Moo Kang just hums and says he understands. He thinks about how it's the weekend and they usually spend the whole day together. He even tried to cook dinner himself. Today, Hye-jin contacted him to say she couldn't come back because of work, and all he could say was okay. Kim Moo Kang packs up his work, feeling how much he wants to see her and how much he misses her. As Kim Moo Kang keeps working, he thinks to himself that he originally decided he would never go home. He's looking forward to seeing Hye-jin again when he gets to their place in Gyeonggi-do, but his sadness hasn't gone away. With night approaching, he calls Hye-jin and tells her he's sorry, but it looks like he won't be able to make it home tonight. She tells him to do his best. He can't stop thinking about how Hye-jin doesn't seem to regret not having him there. He wonders what she thinks of him now, maybe a flea or a cold-hearted person. He decides not to worry about it anymore, thinking about it once is enough. Hye-jin walks into the room holding a brown object close to her chest and calls out, "Sir Moo Kang." Her words make his eyes widen in surprise. She explains that she knocked but didn't get an answer, so she just came in. He looks up, startled to see her. His office is a mess with files and papers all over the floor, which is probably why he didn't hear her. Hye-jin asks about all the files and comments on how busy he must have been. He's so stunned to see her that he mouths her name, young Hye-jin, in disbelief. He questions whether he's dreaming before finally speaking. Kim Moo Kang tells Hye-jin he heard she was heading home already. Hye-jin agrees, saying that was her plan. She was on her way home and talking to Secretary Park on the phone. She asks if Secretary Park is busy and says it's fine, she'll head home first. The caller asks how she'll manage to get to Gyeonggi-do with her luggage and suggests she hang in there a little longer. Hye-jin agrees and takes a seat. While waiting, Hye-jin talks to herself, wondering what Kim Moo Kang is doing right now. She knows he's the CEO of MK Urban Development, but even if it's a workday or a wedding vacation, he should really take some time to rest. She thinks it would be nice if the CEO could take a whole week off. Her thoughts are a bit scattered, but she feels like she's just feeding him at home. Then she remembers that even though he said he was busy with work today, he still sent Secretary Park home. She suddenly wonders if he's up to something shady. Could he be looking for something else? In the car, Hye-jin chats with the driver. She mentions that the representative is going through documents at the company right now. She had heard he was on vacation, but he must be really busy. The driver agrees, saying that no matter if it's a vacation or not, he's still the company's representative. Hye-jin is surprised and asks if even on vacation, he has to work every day. She realizes that the CEO must be getting daily reports and checking on all the progress, which sounds like a lot of work. She wonders when he finds time to do everything, since she's never seen him work in front of her. Her daily routine is pretty simple, cooking, cleaning up, and coming and going, but she can't imagine how he fits in all his work. She feels sorry for doubting him and wonders if Secretary Park knows if he's eaten yet. Hye-jin hands him a parcel with food, telling him to eat and keep working. Even though he's busy, she knows he has a lot of paperwork to handle, so it won't be done quickly. He just smiles. She wonders if he doesn't eat while working, but is glad she brought him a nice meal. He thanks her, takes the food, and mentions he really likes their hamburgers. Hye-jin says she got it as Secretary Park suggested. He smiles and compliments her, calling her caring. He thinks he should give Secretary Park a bonus this month for being so thoughtful. Hye-jin says she's going to leave now. He asks if she's leaving already, but she tells him he has a lot of work and she doesn't want to be a distraction. She also has to work tomorrow. Moo Kang agrees and tells her he didn't mean to be silly earlier. He says seeing her face makes him weak, which surprises her a bit. She sighs and decides to stay and watch him eat. He stretches out his hand, inviting her to sit and rest for a bit. Hye-jin ignores the offer and walks around his office, looking at his architect's certificate, some paperwork, and other project documents. He asks if she really didn't know what he was doing. She admits that she had no idea until now, mostly because she had been imagining things that weren't true. She wonders what he thinks she would do in the company. Hye-jin says she doesn't know much about this. He moves closer to her and asks how he looks today and what's on his mind. She's startled and asks what he means. She says she's only seen him for a short while today. He stands close to her, his face near hers, but he doesn't say anything. He asks why she doesn't know everything about him. She asks, what? Moo Kang touches her hands and asks if she ever thinks about him. He looks into her eyes. She doesn't say anything, but in her heart, she answers that yes, she thinks of him. However, most of her thoughts are negative and biased. While working, Moo Kang thinks about Hye-jin a lot and wonders if she thinks of him in the same way. When she's at the pharmacy with customers coming and going, does she think about him at all? Moo Kang wants to know what Hye-jin really thinks of him as a person. He's genuinely interested in everything about her. Hye-jin tells him she doesn't know all the time, because she's often in the dark about many things. Moo Kang notices that only two types of people come into his room regularly, those who know everything about him and those who want to know everything. He thinks this is why he's been getting grumpier each day. He wonders what kind of person Hye-jin is, whether she's extremely curious, or just doesn't care at all. Moo Kang takes Hye-jin's hand and tells her there are only two kinds of people in his life right now. He asks her which category she thinks she fits into, looking closely into her eyes and waiting for an answer. Hye-jin wonders if this choice only applies to people who work with him at the company and questions if it really includes her. Moo Kang mentions that he's heard everyone around him tries not to hurt others. Hye-jin asks what he means and if it has anything to do with her. She thinks this classification shouldn't apply to her since she is his wife and he knows that. She makes it clear that she doesn't want to choose between the categories and tells him she's not just an employee in his office. She reminds him that she's his wife. Moo Kang looks surprised and asks if that's her answer. He seems to doubt if it really comes from the heart. Hye-jin thinks that if she speaks her true feelings, it might hurt him. If you ask Hye-jin whether she wants to know more about Moo Kang, she honestly can't choose a side. She doesn't fit into either category he mentioned. She doesn't want to dig up any shady or suspicious details and judge him without knowing his true intentions or plans. It's hard to pick a side when she doesn't know much about the other person. Moo Kang's question feels like he's just looking for faults or trying to find something wrong. She tells him that choosing between his two categories would put a burden on whoever has to choose. It's not just about annoyance or opinions, but it also isn't fair if knowing the truth could hurt someone involved. Moo Kang listens quietly. He reaches out, touches her hair, and gently caresses her face. He tells her he still has a lot of work to do, and it's important not to get hurt right now because it could really affect his work. His smile is warm and comforting. Hye-jin feels really confused about what to do. She's torn between staying in this relationship or just running away. The confusion is so overwhelming that running away feels like a real option right now. Then she suddenly thinks, this is married life. They are in this together. Even though they don't know each other well yet, they should still try to get closer, even if it's slow and hesitant. Even if it's married life, things are pretty messy right now. Their relationship is definitely unique. Moo Kang says it seems like everything is slipping away more and more. Hye-jin tells him that she has decided to try harder, so they won't end up like that, though she isn't making any promises. Moo Kang laughs and says he's glad to hear that. He's pleased with her words. Whether it's a political marriage or just an alternative to death, it has to be one or the other. Moo Kang takes off his tie and, as he whispers in her ear, he admits that he doesn't really care. He says removing the tie was a mess for him, but he's fine with it now. He's so close to her right now, and she feels a bit tense. Even though things might not be perfect, she doesn't want to treat them carelessly. She tells him honestly that she doesn't want things to be like that between them. She holds his hands, which are still holding the tie, and says that she really wants to slowly get to know him better, especially since he's her husband. After she leaves, Moo Kang goes back to work at the company, where he is as busy as ever with a lot to do. It's a new day at the pharmacy, and someone delivers today's lunch box. Hye-jin thanks him, saying she appreciates it every day. Her co-worker, Dr. Lee, tells the delivery person to be careful. Hye-jin opens the lunchbox and starts talking about it. She's not sure what's going on. It might be because they still haven't resolved the issue from the weekend. It's tough to meet him on a normal day because he's so busy. She's not sure if he comes back to room 302 every day. Inside the lunchbox is a note that says, "Don't skip meals. Try harder today too. Love you." From Moo Kang. Hye-jin smiles, remembering that Moo Kang leaves a sandwich every day with a message like this. She knows he'll always send a lunchbox. Today's meal looks really good, and she wonders how he finds so many great restaurants. The lunchboxes are always filled with amazing dishes. Suddenly, she panics and shouts because the delivery person, who is as big as a refrigerator, is still there. The person who's scared of the bodyguards at first is none other than Dr. Lee. Since they meet every day, she's getting used to it now. Dr. Lee offers the delivery person a drink, saying he should have something before leaving. She then tells Hye-jin, with a cheeky smile, that she's envious of her lovely marriage. She thinks it's sweet how Moo Kang, worried about his wife, hired a bodyguard and sends lunchboxes every day with those cute notes attached. Hye-jin remembers what Kim Moo Kang asked her, wondering if she ever thinks about him. She wonders if he really meant it when he asked if she thinks about him. Honestly, his image often pops into her head, and even makes her dizzy. Though she tried hard not to think about it before, she's now accepting Moo Kang's image as a natural part of her thoughts. As Hye-jin takes her drink, she finds herself thinking a lot about Moo Kang. She wonders if he has eaten, if he likes coffee, and what kind of coffee he drinks. While strolling around with her cup in hand, she looks at the colorful notes he's written for her over time, and she stops for a moment, smiling at the cute messages. She takes a deep breath and decides to call him. She tells him that she enjoyed the lunch from the box and ate it all. On the phone, he teases her playfully, and she smiles, standing on the walkway while talking to him. She tells Moo Kang to stop with the jokes and comments, saying they are having a good time, and just look at her happy smile. As she's talking, someone walks by and reads her name from her lab coat. She finishes her call, telling Moo Kang to work hard. The young man stops for a moment, glances back at her, but doesn't say anything. Dr. Lee comes over to ask if she can leave work early. She checks with Hye-jin, who says it's fine for Dr. Lee to go. Dr. Lee waves goodbye and leaves, while Hye-jin continues working. She plans to finish up with the files and waits for Kim Moo Kang to pick her up after work. The man from earlier stands outside for a moment, looking into the pharmacy. He comes in, and Hye-jin greets him, asking what medicine he needs. He says he wants something for when he's sick, but doesn't say exactly what's wrong. She gives him a drug and explains he needs to take it twice a day before meals, 2 tablets each time. He pays for the medicine, and she thanks him for coming in. Hye-jin thinks to herself about the man in front of her. He has such polite manners, which makes her wonder what kind of person he is. He looks at her and asks if she doesn't recognize him. She's a bit puzzled and starts to wonder if he's trying to flirt with her or something. Hye-jin replies that she doesn't recognize him, but says it's nice to meet him. The man moves a little closer and touches his chin, saying that her face seems very familiar. Hye-jin feels a bit tense, especially since it's strange that someone suspicious would show up on the day she's alone at the pharmacy. She can't shake the feeling that something is off. In her mind, she's already prepared to call for help if needed. She keeps her phone in hand, ready to alert the bodyguard if she feels any danger. The young man then says he remembers where he knows her from. With a slightly shy smile, he tells her that he recognizes her as Moo Kang's wife. He mentions that he was actually at their wedding. Hye-jin is surprised and asks him how he knew she was married to Moo Kang. He quickly explains that he attended their wedding and that's how he knows who she is. The man tells Hye-jin that he knew her name and was aware she's a pharmacist. That explains why he was staring and why he stopped earlier to look at her name tag. Hye-jin is still not quite convinced, but he extends his hand for a handshake and introduces himself as Jeon Sung-hyun. He says he studied in the US with Moo Kang. Hye-jin decides to go along with it, shakes his hand, and introduces herself. She apologizes for not recognizing him, even though he was at her wedding. She really didn't remember him. Sung-hyun comments that it seems a bit odd to see her working even after getting married. He then shifts his tone and says that it's not like she's working for money. If she's a pharmacist, her job is just about dealing with sickness and problems. His words are a bit harsh, but Hye-jin doesn't react strongly. She tells him that she actually enjoys her work. In her mind, she's trying hard to stay calm. Since he says he's a friend of Moo Kang's, she feels there's no need to panic. Sung Hye-in mentions that he noticed her place of work and where she lives are far apart. He asks if it isn't a bit tiring to travel from her place to Seoul since he heard she lives in Pyeongchang-dong. Hye-jin thinks to herself that Moo Kang must have shared a lot about their life as newlyweds, because the details Sung Hye-in knows aren't common knowledge. She feels a bit uneasy and wonders if Moo Kang really talks so openly about their private life. Sung Hye-in says he has to leave now, but wanted to share something first. He mentions that everyone is saying Moo Kang got married without much notice, and didn't introduce his wife properly. Hye-jin's expression turns cold as she suggests they discuss this with Moo Kang directly. She feels that Sung Hye-in is being rude by saying these things to her face. Sung Hye-in tries to reassure her, saying not to take it the wrong way. He suggests that Hye-jin could invite Moo Kang's friends over for a get-together. He adds that if she leaves it all up to Moo Kang, it seems like she's trying to avoid dealing with uncomfortable things. Hye-jin knows Moo Kang well enough to say that he isn't someone who would disregard his loved ones without a good reason. So, it makes sense that she hasn't met Sung Hye-in before. She looks at him sternly and asks why he thinks Moo Kang is the way he is. Has he ever thought about it? She firmly says that if Moo Kang dislikes something, then she dislikes it too. She remembers Moo Kang's words clearly. He once told her that if she didn't want to do something, he wouldn't force her. He even held her hand and promised to always stand by her. It was a sweet and unforgettable moment. Hye-jin tells Sung Hye-in in her store that she has no intention of forcing Moo Kang to do anything he doesn't want to. She emphasizes that they are a couple. Just as she finishes speaking, the door swings open, and Moo Kang walks in. Moo Kang calls out Hye-jin's name and apologizes for being late. She smiles with a bit of cheekiness, and is clearly pleased that he arrived just at this moment. She tells him she's just finished with her last customer, and is about to lock up the pharmacy for the day. Moo Kang offers to take her bag, showing he wants to help. As Moo Kang looks at Sung Hye-in, his expression becomes serious. Sung Hye-in, seeing Moo Kang, asks how he's doing and says it's nice to see him again after a long time. He suggests they should stay in touch. Moo Kang completely ignores Sung Hye-in's attempt at friendliness and turns to Hye-jin. He asks her why she hasn't come outside yet, figuring it must be because of Sung Hye-in. Hye-jin explains that Sung Hye-in mentioned he recognized her name, which is why she was talking to him. Moo Kang quickly interrupts her, saying that Sung Hye-in is not really his friend. He calls him Lee Sung Hye-in and says their business together is finished. He then questions why Sung Hye-in is still lingering around and not leaving. The young man tells Moo Kang he doesn't need to be so rude and that he thought they would have a good relationship. Moo Kang looks very serious and tells him not to be silly, demanding that he leave immediately. It's pretty harsh. The young man just smiles and says he'll go now, but they'll see each other later. He waves goodbye to Hye-jin, ignoring Moo Kang completely, and walks out the door. Moo Kang looks at Hye-jin with a mix of irritation and affection, calling the young man a bad boy. Hye-jin replies that the young man's name is Sung Hye-in. Moo Kang raises an eyebrow and asks her how she knows his name. He then tells her to forget about it, insisting that she doesn't need to know it anymore. With a teasing smile, he wonders aloud how she managed to remember another man's name. His jealousy is unmistakable, as he playfully chides her. Moo Kang stretches out his hand toward her, still smiling, and asks if she's tired. He suggests that they should leave now. Hye-jin, feeling a bit more relaxed, returns his smile and takes his hand. They walk out together, their hands clasped, with Moo Kang leading the way. As they head out, Hye-jin's mind is still occupied with a lingering concern. Despite the pleasant moment they are sharing, she can't shake off a feeling of unease. She reflects on their sudden marriage and realizes that she has never met Moo Kang's friends or acquaintances, only his family. It feels strange to her, considering Moo Kang is someone who is very good at speaking in public, looks great, and is quite popular. She finds it odd that she hasn't had the chance to meet more of his friends. It's as if there's a whole part of his life that she's missing out on. Hye-jin wonders if this is normal, or if there's something she should be worried about. The lack of interaction with Moo Kang's social circle leaves her feeling a bit unsettled. It's a nagging thought in the back of her mind, casting a shadow over what would otherwise be a perfect moment. She's always been on her own, so she wonders if she's just overthinking everything. She feels like something is missing because usually, people would have friends around them, especially after getting married. But in their case, she hasn't seen that. While they are driving in the car, she decides to ask Moo Kang a question. She wants to know if he sees his friends often. Moo Kang tells her he doesn't see them much lately. She then asks if there are things like class reunions, and Moo Kang replies that there are, but he doesn't go to them. Moo Kang then asks her why she is suddenly curious about his friends and reunions. She explains that she doesn't have any friends of her own, and that since Moo Kang's friends don't seem to be around, it feels a bit strange. She also mentions that usually, people have housewarming parties either before or after getting married, but they haven't had one. She just feels like there's something missing and can't help but think about it. She asks Moo Kang if he can call his friends if it's okay with him. He puts his head on the steering wheel and doesn't say anything. It looks like her request bothers him. She notices and asks what's wrong. Moo Kang tells her he likes her idea because it shows how innocent and caring she is. She's confused about what he means, but he just sits there smiling at her. He calls her cute and says it's heartbreaking to see her so unaware of things. She puts her hand on her chest and notices the traffic light has turned green. She tells Moo Kang to go ahead and drive. As they move, she thinks about how sweet and exciting a day with him feels. Everything seems calm and nice. Later, she wakes up in bed, feeling surprised because she doesn't remember falling asleep. She thinks she heard a noise and calls out Moo Kang's name, asking if he's back and where he is. She notices blood on the floor and sees his clothes covered in blood. She starts to panic, wondering if something bad happened. She thought the weekend would be peaceful, but now everything seems to be going wrong. It's raining heavily, and the rainy season seems to be lasting longer than usual. Moo Kang and Hye-jin get out of their car, and Moo Kang holds an umbrella over her to keep her dry. She tells him she's glad everyone got home safely. Moo Kang tells her she should go inside the house because he has to leave for work. Something urgent has come up, and he needs to get there quickly. She looks unhappy, but he reassures her that he has picked out all the movies she can watch over the weekend since he won't be around. Hye-jin smiles warmly and says she'll be waiting for him at home. She tells him she'll stay at home, eagerly waiting for his return, and asks him to take care of himself and come back soon. She doesn't want to be alone for too long. Moo Kang is a bit surprised by her words, but stays calm and smiles at her. She reminds him to drive carefully in the heavy rain. Suddenly, he hugs her warmly. She snuggles into his arms, feeling comforted and loved. Moo Kang says he'll be back soon, and that she won't have to wait too long. Hye-jin goes inside, but stops at the balcony to wave goodbye to him once more. Moo Kang watches her for a moment, looking serious and focused, like he's on an important mission. He thinks to himself that Hye-jin said she'd be waiting, so he can't keep her waiting too long. He realizes that what makes a house a home is having someone to come back to, and he feels he has that now. But right now, he has other urgent matters to deal with. He knows it's time to catch the rat in his trap, so he moves on. When Moo Kang arrives at the office, he calls Secretary Park to let him know he's there. The secretary warns him that the plan is risky and asks him to wait until he arrives. Moo Kang doesn't listen and tells the secretary to take his time and not rush. He says he wants to handle it himself. There's a culprit, someone he calls the rat, who is about to fall into his trap. Moo Kang refers to the mysterious man in black as their precious guest in the office. Moo Kang plans to make the intruder his prey tonight. He tells Secretary Park to turn off the CCTV in the lobby and the elevator for 30 minutes. This is all part of his master plan. Moo Kang has parked his car outside the company building just in case something goes wrong. He's prepared for any situation. He thinks the intruder is likely watching the CCTV footage inside the building. That's why he took action with the cameras earlier. If the intruder sees movement in the parking lot CCTV, he might get scared and run away. Moo Kang wants to make sure there's no evidence left if they have to go to the police station. Moo Kang has planned this out very carefully. He believes the intruder only wants one thing, the design book. He sits quietly in the dark, waiting. As the intruder sneaks around the office, Moo Kang speaks up suddenly. The intruder is caught off guard, his eyes widen in shock because he didn't expect anyone to be here at this hour. Moo Kang, with a strong and intense presence, asks the intruder what he is looking for. The intruder stays silent, and Moo Kang continues talking. He tells the intruder that he's really unlucky, thinking he'd succeed in his mission. Moo Kang says he's been enjoying hiding here in the dark, waiting for this moment. Over the past week, while reviewing work documents, he figured out that there's something in the design book that Director Choi is trying to hide from him. Moo Kang hasn't figured it out completely yet, but he's sure he's close. He knows that someone as thorough as Manager Choi would do everything possible to either steal the blueprint or destroy it. Moo Kang anticipated this move, which is why he set up this trap and planned everything carefully. He knew the intruder would try something like this, so he prepared. On the top floor, where the office is, there are special CCTVs that would catch anyone trying to enter without permission. His phone alerted him when the intruder arrived. The intruder is sweating a lot right now. He's in a tough spot, trapped like a mouse with nowhere to run. Moo Kang remains calm and collected. He invites the intruder to sit down with him, and the intruder does, taking a seat nearby. Moo Kang warns him not to do anything rash, because he's not stupid and expects the worst. The intruder tries to be clever and pulls out a weapon, hoping to attack Moo Kang. But Moo Kang easily overpowers him. He expresses his disappointment, saying he was hoping for a conversation, but it seems that's not going to happen now. The intruder struggles hard, but gets beaten badly. He screams in pain, begging and crying. Moo Kang tells him that he's made a big mistake and fallen into the wrong hands. The intruder screams, saying that if Moo Kang wants to kill him, he should just do it. Or if Moo Kang is going to report him, he should go ahead and report him to the authorities. Moo Kang moves closer and says he won't be reporting him to anyone. Instead, there's a good chance the intruder won't live long enough to be helped by the authorities. Moo Kang tells him he can do whatever he wants, because he won't be punished. He then asks the intruder if he thinks anyone will find him if he goes missing. The intruder shakes with fear. Holding the intruder firmly, Moo Kang asks if he thinks anyone will be able to find him, his parents, his siblings, his spouse, or the person who sent him here. The intruder starts to panic, realizing he's in a really bad situation. He says he'll talk and tell Moo Kang everything. Moo Kang demands to know who is behind this. The intruder replies that if he had just taken care of Moo Kang, none of this would be happening. The intruder drops his weapon and pleads, asking Moo Kang what he wants. Moo Kang picks up the weapon and hands it back to him, asking him to cut him. The intruder is confused at first, but Moo Kang points to where he should make the cut, showing him from here to here. Moo Kang tells him not to cut too deep, just enough to cause a scratch. The intruder seems to see this as an opportunity, and looks a bit relieved. Moo Kang explains that there are only two kinds of people who come into this room, those who know everything about him and those who want to know everything about him. As he says this, he thinks about his wife waiting for him at home. Either way, something is going to happen before anyone gets out of here. Our female lead is lying in bed, fast asleep. Suddenly, she hears a noise and wakes up. She sees blood and realizes someone is here. It's Moo Kang. He stands there, holding his bleeding stomach, and looks at her while she sleeps. He doesn't look good at all, he's sweating and has lost a lot of blood. Even though he's in pain, he manages to smile a little. Seeing her makes him happy, even though he's hurting badly. He moves closer and kneels beside her, thinking she must have been waiting for him. He reaches out with his hand, wanting to touch her face, but he stops. He knows she wouldn't want to see him like this, it would scare her. He decides not to touch her and realizes he needs to fix this before she finds out. She mustn't know. Later, Moo Kang is in the shower, washing the blood off his body. He's frustrated with the intruder. The guy didn't know how to handle a sharp object properly, even though Moo Kang had given him a chance. The intruder's hands were shaking, so he cut Moo Kang deeper than he expected. Moo Kang thinks that whoever sent the intruder must have chosen him, because he was someone who wouldn't be a waste if things went wrong. While he's in the shower, he goes over the whole situation in his mind. Even if things go badly, it's easy to handle. If the intruder got caught and died, it wouldn't really hurt Director Choi. At least that's what the director would believe. Moo Kang wonders about his own actions. He's injured himself, but why? He wants to keep pushing forward and make Director Choi pay for trying to bring him down. That's the real goal behind all his planning and the trap. Moo Kang puts on his clothes, looking fit and strong. He feels that Director Choi made a big mistake by ignoring him as a kid, and that sending someone as unprofessional as the intruder was a foolish choice. Then he hears someone at the bathroom door. It's Hye-jin. She opens the door and Moo Kang realizes with a shock that she's holding his blooded shirt. At that moment, he feels really foolish. Hye-jin looks really angry, her eyes full of fury. Moo Kang notices how mad she is but tries to stay calm and smiles. He asks her if she woke up because of him, acting like he doesn't even see the blooded shirt in her hand. He's always seen her as someone who notices everything and doesn't miss a thing. He stands in front of her, and she demands to know what's going on. Moo Kang knew she'd be upset if she ever saw him like this, looking hurt in their home. He admits that she might be disappointed in him. Hye-jin says that if he was really worried about her feelings, he shouldn't have done this in the first place. Moo Kang looks her in the eyes and says seriously that he'll explain everything if she promises not to hate him. Hye-jin grabs him by his clothes and yells that she can't make that promise. Hye-jin is really hurt by what's happening. She tells Moo Kang that she left her family too and hates seeing blood everywhere. She looks at his patched-up wounds with disgust. She asks if the person who hurt him is behind this. Moo Kang says no, the intruder was just a pawn in a bigger, dirty game. Hye-jin wants to know if he's serious, and Moo Kang assures her he is, saying he wouldn't lie to her now. She asks if his life is still in danger, if he's still at risk of losing it. Moo Kang stays silent, and she's clearly more upset by his silence. Hye-jin storms out, trying not to cry. Moo Kang calls after her, begging her to wait. She stops but doesn't look at him. He explains that she's misunderstanding him. He was attacked. The intruder broke into his office and threatened him with a weapon. He says he had no choice but to catch the thief. He couldn't just let him go after trying to rob him. Moo Kang tries to reach out and hold her hand, but she pulls away, shouting that he shouldn't touch her. Hye-jin feels threatened by his presence, and she warns that if he touches her, she won't stay still. She takes a defensive stance, ready to fight if needed. Moo Kang is left confused and upset, not knowing what to do. Hye-jin runs out of the room, not caring about Moo Kang standing there, confused and lost in thought. She dashes out into the rain, and Moo Kang stays where he is for a moment, wrestling with his feelings. He clenches his fist and decides he can't let her go like this. He rushes out into the rain, shouting her name while wearing just his robe. Despite the heavy rain, he stops and sees her standing ahead, looking like she's caught between emotions. He walks up to her and stands right in front of her. Hye-jin tells him to move, but he begs her to listen. She insists she's heard enough already. He tries to reassure her that he hasn't been bullying anyone or anything like that, but she interrupts him. With a lot of pain in her voice, she tells him that she's had enough of the violence and chaos. She mentions her dad and brother, and says she's seen too much of the thug life, bloody confrontations, and murders. She hates all of it. Hye-jin has a hard heart, willing to leave behind her tough family. Moo Kang feels the same way, bound by a marriage he chose over death. He sees that she's someone who throws away everything she doesn't want, and it hits him hard. From the first moment they met, he admired her determination, but now that same determination is hurting him deeply. He doesn't want to be left alone, especially not after the attack. He really cares about her. She's the first woman he's ever loved, and he can't forget their first meeting. Moo Kang is on his knees in the pouring rain, desperate and pleading. He doesn't want to be abandoned like this, not tonight, not after what just happened with the intruder. The sight of him kneeling in the rain shocks Hye-jin, and it visibly scares her. She looks at him, wide-eyed, and demands to know what he's doing. She tells him to stand up, but Moo Kang remains where he is, his voice breaking as he speaks. He tells her he won't try to make excuses or convince her with empty promises, but he begs her not to leave him. He explains that he's just been attacked, and if she leaves now, she might be in danger too. It's not safe for her out here alone. His desperation is clear, as he pulls out all the stops, saying anything that comes to mind in the hope that something will reach her. He reminds her of the vows he made on their wedding day, that he would never hurt her, and that he married her because he truly loves her. He talks about the times they shared, sitting and eating together, even though he was afraid she might dislike it. He remembers how he went to her workplace, trying to be close to her. He questions whether this is really where it all ends. Moo Kang's heart aches as he continues to plead. He tells her he's not asking for forgiveness, or for her to forget everything that happened. He just needs her to understand that he's trying to protect her and that he's scared. He's scared for himself, for her, and for their future. He needs her to believe him and to come back home with him. The rain pours down around them, and Moo Kang's voice cracks with emotion as he reaches out for her, hoping that she'll see the sincerity in his eyes and agree to return with him. He tells her she's in danger and pleads with her not to leave. He assures her he won't hurt her and promises to do his best to protect her family. He needs her to believe him, because it's the only way he can keep her safe. He insists her family won't get hurt because of him. It's simply not acceptable. Moo Kang takes her hands and asks her to come back home with him. So, Moo Kang is hurt, and Hye-jin's feelings are deeply wounded too. They are in a tough situation. Will she agree to go home with him? She agrees, and when they reach the door, he suggests they go inside together. He adjusts the water temperature, and warns her that she'll catch a cold if she doesn't wash up right away. Then, he tells her he's heading out. She grabs his robe and asks why. She says she needs blood, mentioning that he keeps bleeding. Knowing she hates blood, he reassures her that he'll bring a change of clothes and tells her to take care of herself first. After he closes the door, he calls Secretary Park and asks him to come over right away. He thinks to himself that he can't show any more anger than this. When Secretary Park arrives, he asks what happened and why there's blood everywhere. Secretary Park is visibly worried, so he tells him he has a lot of work to do and should clean the house first. He asks if he's seriously injured but insists he wants to clean up first. He wants the blood stains gone and the smell cleared out. He knows they need to step up security because Hye-jin could be in danger. Secretary Park, still concerned, insists that treatment can't wait any longer, but he replies that it's not the main issue right now. This is the second attack, and they need to act quickly. As Hye-jin comes closer, she looks at him and warns that he's in danger if he doesn't stop bleeding. He starts to respond, but she interrupts, saying he's being stubborn and adds that Secretary Park is in a tough spot. He thinks to himself that she sounds like she's scolding a troublemaker. He agrees to listen to her and wonders if she would think it strange if he smiles in this situation. Secretary Park then says he will contact Mr. Jung. He apologizes for calling so late and requests that he comes over immediately. He can't make eye contact with her. He feels a bit dizzy, realizing he's lost more blood than he expected because of the heavy rain. He didn't even notice a wound on his stomach at the time. He remembers telling her it was safest for them to stay together, even if she doesn't like him or want to see him. All he can think about is how to change her mind. He worries that if she goes to her parents' house looking like this, it might be more dangerous. She had asked about her house and whether her mom is in danger, and he had promised her that he would make sure nothing bad happens. He thinks about her worried expression and decides he will protect her because he never wants to see her scared like that again. Secretary Park calls him 3 times to snap him out of his thoughts. He tells him that Mr. Jung will arrive in 10 minutes, and that he has requested more security personnel. He also mentions that the blood has been cleaned up. During all this, she is staring at him with an angry look. As she walks away, Secretary Park tells him that he will take care of the rest, so the president should take a break. Watching her go, he smiles and thinks she looks pretty, even with tears in her eyes. He remembers her saying she is a hard-hearted person who has abandoned her family, but he knows she is actually kind. She doesn't want her family to be in danger, and she worries when he comes back injured. Just then, Mr. Jung arrives and starts the treatment immediately. Still lost in his thoughts, he wonders how she must feel right now, and what is going through her mind since she has locked herself in the bedroom. He knows she is anxious and probably scared, and he wishes he could hug her and hold her close. Secretary Park breaks his thoughts, asking how he can help with her mother. He tells him to let it go for now because she doesn't want to see anyone. He insists that he is the one who will take care of her if she needs anything, but he knows that no one can comfort her right now. The night feels too long for him because he can't reach Hye-jin. The next morning, he knocks on her door and asks if she is still sleeping. He thinks it must be work time and wonders if he should just leave her alone or call her again. Just then, the main door opens a little, and he peeks in. Secretary Park comes in to see him. "Ah, Kim Moo Kang," he says, surprised. "I heard you were injured. Are you okay?" He is shocked and asks if his parents are here too. He asks his father what he is doing here, pointing out that his father never contacts him. His father shrugs it off, saying it doesn't seem like a big deal. He starts to say something, but his father interrupts, saying it's over now. His father takes a cup from him and asks what's in it. While he offers his mother a drink, his father asks if he's surprised to see them. He replies that maybe his mother is more surprised than he is about being injured. His mother chimes in, saying she came because she was worried about him. He laughs and thanks her, knowing she cares. Just then, Hye-jin walks in and greets them, saying, "Mother, father." Her mother-in-law responds warmly, calling her "my baby," while her father-in-law apologizes for showing up so early. Hye-jin tells them she should have checked on them first, and her father-in-law agrees, asking if she is okay. She says she is fine, but then looks at Moo Kang and adds that he isn't fine. She warns him not to overdo things, and then gets up to offer refreshments. Her mother-in-law quickly says she doesn't need to do that. Holding Hye-jin's hands in hers, her mother-in-law asks if she is surprised, if she had a tough time, if she has been sleeping well, and if she has eaten. Hye-jin thinks for a moment and replies that she is fine. Then, Moo Kang's father tells him to come with him, and they walk into another room to talk. His father starts asking about the new construction projects, but Moo Kang stays silent. He thinks to himself that it was definitely General Manager Choi who ordered the theft. However, Director Choi is close to his father, so it could get complicated if he talks too quickly about what's happening at the company. He realizes that a third party is causing trouble, and he knows bigger problems are on the way. So, he tells his father he is trying to find out who is behind it all and adds that he shouldn't worry too much, as that's all he can say for now. His father looks serious and tells him he isn't alone anymore. He thinks his father doubts him and asks if he doesn't believe in him. His father replies that to protect the family, he must be strong. Hearing this makes Moo Kang clench his fists as his father walks away. As they are about to leave, her mother-in-law tells Hye-jin that they can come back to visit later. She explains they came because they were worried and adds that Hye-jin should get some rest too. Be careful, she says as they leave. After cleaning up the cups, Hye-jin brings a first aid box and asks to see Moo Kang's wound. He says it's okay, mentioning that Dr. Jung came yesterday, but she insists on seeing what happened. With a sigh, he starts to unbutton his shirt. When she sees the wound, she decides to change the bandage. She carefully removes the old bandage and redresses the wound. He tells her he still feels really bad, but she says to hold on, and she'll get him more painkillers. He stops her, saying it's okay. Then she reminds him that he said it hurts. He agrees and adds that he doesn't need the painkillers because she cares for him. On a serious note, she thinks that no matter how much Moo Kang grew up in a tough environment, he must have been raised with some privilege. She wonders if he has been hurt badly on the streets before, so she decides to ask him. She questions him about what he said earlier, asking if this is really his first time being hurt like this. He shakes his head and tells her it's not the first time he has been stabbed. He shows her a scar on his chest and explains that it's bumpy because he was very sick when he was young. He tells her that most of his childhood memories start at the hospital. He explains that he has a congenital heart condition, which means there's a hole in the wall of his heart. It usually varies in size, but his luck runs out, the hole keeps getting bigger. His condition worsens because of complications. One day, after a regular checkup, he is on his way home from the hospital when he sees someone familiar. It's the same person he noticed at his grandfather's funeral. He remembers staring at her from the car, then suddenly tells his uncle to wait. He impulsively gets out to search for Hye-jin, though he isn't sure why he feels this way. He wonders if he is excited about his checkup results, or just being foolish. He recalls a moment when Hye-jin's brother was hitting her, and he tried to stop him. He remembers how his head hits the wall, and he cries out in pain, feeling it in his heart. Hye-jin then asks if he is okay and thanks him for helping her. She warns him not to get involved in other people's problems, saying it's her fight. He can't take his eyes off her, as she points out that he is bleeding under his eyes. He used to think love at first sight was a made-up story, but now he realizes it can happen to anyone at any time. When she suggests they go to the hospital for treatment, he thinks to himself that he just came from one. Hye-jin tells him to hold on because she has a first aid kit in her bag. As she digs it out, he thinks about her. She is firm when she says he got hurt because of her, so she can't just leave him. She is strong when she tells him to show her his face. She is neat as she points out that the cut is deeper than it looks, assuring him he will be okay. He thinks she is lovely. She insists he should go to the hospital to avoid infection or tetanus, and then she says goodbye. He watches her walk away, feeling a mix of emotions. It's spring, and it feels like the beginning of his first love. He thinks they might see each other again, imagining that if he waits a little longer, they could wear the same school uniforms and attend the same school. But then, his heart, which had been stable for a while, has another seizure. With just a machine helping his broken heartbeat, he struggles. When it gets unbearable, he collapses on the floor. His father calls for help, and his mother screams his name. They have no choice but to take him to the best hospital in America for surgery. So, he goes to America. He survives several surgeries, but during recovery, the food tastes awful. He remembers promising himself that once he is better, he will cook something delicious to share with the people he loves. Occasionally, he thinks of his homeland, but the main face in his mind is Hye-jin, his first love from Ganghan Construction. He thinks about how she, an ordinary girl, cut ties with her family early because of her father. He wonders how she can manage to live in such an expensive place, laughing to himself at the thought. He follows her news and hears how she faces bigger opponents, dreams of a better future, and protects herself in every corner of her life. He compares himself to her and feels a rush of excitement. He calls his father to tell him he wants to study again. He wants to become a person who can stand confidently in front of Hye-jin, someone cool enough to make her look back at him. So, he walks and walks. When he returns home, his parents are surprised to see him. His father says he looks like an American and that he has grown well, while his mother questions if he is really her son, Moo Kang. He laughs and greets them happily. From that point on, he walks a steady path. He graduates from a prestigious university in the US and comes back to Korea, where he takes charge of an affiliate of MK Construction. Then he discovers that Hye-jin is working as a pharmacist at a small pharmacy in Gyeonggi-do. He thinks about how he can go there and meet her naturally. One day, he overhears a discussion about a woman who might become his sister-in-law. Curious, he looks at her details and wonders if she is the one. His mother mentions that Man-soo knows his parents don't want to force him to marry, but since he hasn't met anyone else, they are talking about her. She adds that the girl is the daughter of Ganghan Construction, pretty, and has a decent job as a pharmacist. As he listens, he thinks there's nothing wrong with being the daughter of Ganghan Construction. He takes the document from his mother, deciding he needs to meet Hye-jin now. He tells his parents that he will go see her, thinking to himself that if she has to meet anyone, it should be him. He asks his brother to let him see the document. His brother hands it over, saying, "Here you are." As he takes it, he thinks to himself, if things are meant to come together, then he's the one who has to make it happen. Hye-jin suddenly cuts in, asking if the real reason he went to America was for surgery. She'd heard this before, especially from the second son of MK Construction, who said it would happen someday. She always thought he had grown up surrounded by love, so he didn't know anything about pain or hardship. She thought she understood him, but now she realizes she might have been wrong. He apologizes for surprising her, but she admits she wasn't just shocked by that. She had started hoping for a sweet, happy marriage with him. She wants to hold his hand whenever she can. Even though their first step was a mistake, she knows they can still live a normal life, like anyone else. As she talks, her mind drifts to another memory. She remembers holding his shirt and thinking about how life can turn into a disaster in a blink. Her thoughts go back to a moment when her father yelled at her mother to hurry and get the first aid kit, asking if she wanted to see her husband die before she got herself together. That day, the living room was filled with blood. Her father was shouting, her mother was crying while trying to clean up the mess, and the room was filled with a strong, bloody smell. It was as if she was reliving that nightmare. All she wanted was to get out of the house. That day was really bad. She tells him that the smell in the air now reminded her of that horrible day. She had worked so hard to forget it, but now it's all flooding back. He asks her what this reality is that she's talking about. She says that she chose marriage over death, as a way to keep going. She apologizes again for what happened the previous day, but he doesn't understand why. She explains that she had spent the entire night thinking about him being hurt. She admits she was a coward, that she had been selfish too, and that if he were really the one, he never would have abandoned her. But now, she promises she won't do that again. She says she won't run away anymore, and she's even planning to quit working at the pharmacy. She feels it's time to focus more on their marriage. He's surprised, asking if she's sure about leaving her job since she loves it so much. She agrees but explains that things are dangerous right now. She doesn't want to risk bringing trouble to the pharmacy or making him worry. She reminds him again that she won't run away this time. Hearing that, he smiles and says, "That's the Hye-jin I know." She makes him promise not to keep things from her anymore because it's her job to help him, but he hesitates, not wanting her to worry. She says it's her choice too, and she wants to be a good wife. She then asks about the new corporation he's dealing with. He tells her he's still trying to figure out which organization is behind the person who stabbed him. Just as he's about to explain more, the doorbell rings. "Is someone here?" she asks. They hear her brother loudly arguing with the guard at the door, yelling that he's her father-in-law, and demanding to be let in. As her brother enters, he looks at the couple and sarcastically asks if that's how they train their guards. Her mother, smiling, calls her name, while Moo Kang asks, "Is she really here?" Hye-jin sighs to herself, thinking, "They never give me a break." In the living room, her brother comments on how shiny the house is, hinting that they must have a lot of money. Her mother, noticing Moo Kang, apologizes for the sudden visit, asking if it's too much for him. Her brother interrupts, saying there's nothing surprising about visiting their daughter's home, reminding everyone that they agreed to this visit a month ago. Hye-jin almost snaps at him but holds herself back, thinking it's better not to make a big deal out of it. He clearly doesn't know what happened the day before. Her brother then starts picking on her, mentioning that she's still working at the pharmacy. He jokes that she must be tough, but points out she'll never make as much money as her husband, suggesting it's better for her to be a housewife. She admits she was already planning to quit, but her father, curious, asks Moo Kang if he forced her to stop working. Surprised, Moo Kang denies it, saying he respects her job and thinks it's great. He adds that even if she takes a break, he'll make sure she can return to work whenever she wants. Her father seems satisfied with that answer, bragging that Hye-jin inherited her intelligence from him. She rolls her eyes, thinking to herself that he only acknowledges her as his daughter when it's convenient for him. Trying to ease the tension, Moo Kang mentions that he's hungry and offers to set the table. Her mother says she brought some side dishes with her, and Moo Kang, always trying his best, asks if she made them herself and if she could teach him the recipes. As Moo Kang sets the table, her father questions if he's only in charge of urban development. Moo Kang confirms that, explaining that his brother manages the headquarters, while he focuses on urban projects. Her father seems unimpressed, asking if Moo Kang plans to open a restaurant after retirement, to which Moo Kang replies yes. Her father, shocked, says if he had known this, he would have had Hye-jin marry Moo Kang's brother instead. He remarks that Moo Kang's brother is more handsome and capable, making her brother laugh and agree. He also suggests that Hye-jin quitting her job must be because of her husband, implying that living together will always end up like this. Hye-jin interrupts him, calling him Oppa to stop his rant. Her brother is surprised, slamming the table, saying marriage has made her more mature, and joking that Moo Kang has done a good job educating her. Moo Kang, trying to keep the peace, softly calls her brother Big Brother, staring at him with a calm, firm expression. Moo Kang calls her brother Older Brother, and her brother, clearly surprised, says her. Hye-jin, curious and a bit confused, wonders what Moo Kang is doing. She asks him why he said that, but he ignores her question. Instead, he grabs her hand under the dining table, and with a playful smile, says that if her brother wants to be called Older Brother, then he'll do it. Moo Kang calls him brother again, this time playfully, which makes her brother angry. Her brother snaps, asking what he means by that and if he's offended him while sitting at the head of the table. Moo Kang, still calm, tells him that it's no big deal and continues to call him brother. Her brother, now frustrated, asks if Moo Kang thinks he's the type to joke around. He insists that he's not someone who plays around. Moo Kang, still using brother, asks him what he thinks he looks like. This annoys her brother even more, and just as he's about to argue further, their father yells, "Oh, it's too noisy. Just eat your food." Moo Kang quickly apologizes and then, turning to Hye-jin's mother, asks if he can call her sister too. He adds that if she goes out with him, people will surely notice how much they look like siblings. Her mother laughs, clearly charmed, and thanks him for his kind words. Moo Kang then calls her mother as well. Hye-jin, sitting there quietly, feels like she's caught up in the chaotic but playful energy. She notices that her mother is laughing and chatting, something she hasn't seen in a long time. Even though she's her real daughter, Hye-jin could never be this kind or warm with her mother. She reflects on how, back in their suffocating family home, she always felt like no one was on her side. But now, in this house, things feel different. Moo Kang notices her deep in thought and asks, "What's up?" She snaps out of it and replies, "Nothing." The room grows quiet as everyone focuses on their food. Her brother, however, still looks irritated as he eats. After dinner, Hye-jin sees her brother lying on the sofa and shouts, "What?" She asks if he's planning to sleep there, and he casually replies, "Yes, it's late, and I'm tired." He mentions that there are plenty of rooms in the house, so why not? Moo Kang, ever the polite host, offers their bedroom to her brother and suggests that their parents use the guest room. He even offers to guide him to the bedroom, but her brother refuses. He says he likes the sofa and doesn't feel like moving. Hye-jin, frustrated, sighs and buries her head in a pillow. Moo Kang asks her what's bothering her, and she apologizes, thanking him for being so patient with her family. She tells him he doesn't have to put up with all this nonsense. He responds by saying she doesn't really need to apologize or thank him. After all, her family is part of her, and that's enough for him to try his best. She squeezes the pillow tightly, feeling bad that her family treats Moo Kang poorly. She didn't even realize he was hurt, physically and emotionally. Then Moo Kang asks her if she's hurt too, and she admits she doesn't really know. Hye-jin's thoughts drift to her brother, whom she finds ignorant and selfish. She hates how her father constantly asks rude, invasive questions. And she feels sorry for her mother, who can never seem to speak up in front of him. Hye-jin admits to Moo Kang that she feels embarrassed and angry, but most of all, she feels ashamed of herself for letting her anger show in front of him. She tells him that she's not the kind of person who should have to put up with her family's behavior. Moo Kang asks her if it's okay for him to be a little happy that she was worried about him, but she tells him this isn't the time for jokes. She's genuinely embarrassed by her family and serious about how she feels. He reassures her, saying that it's okay, and that he's always going to be on her side from now on. He promises not to take her mother's side without understanding how Hye-jin feels first. He adds that a good husband should always listen to his wife. Hye-jin feels a bit relieved, but at the same time, she tells herself she can't keep going on like this. Still, she admits that Moo Kang is starting to feel like a real husband. He then jokes, asking if they are having a couples fight right now. She looks at him and asks, "You think this is what a couple fight looks like?" before playfully hitting him with a pillow. Moo Kang, pretending to be hurt, yells, "Ayaya," and jokes that he's sick from all the fighting. He says it would be better if he just slept next to her tonight. Hye-jin tells him to change his bandage, wash up, and come out. Then, she adds that when he finishes washing up, he shouldn't put his clothes back on because she needs to reapply the bandage. Moo Kang starts to tease her about how she's talking to him, but before he can finish, she throws a pillow at him, telling him to cut the nonsense before he hurts himself. He laughs, feeling like a playful, carefree kid again. Inside, he feels like a wild, untamed leopard. Hye-jin wonders if he's acting like this to show off that he comes from a different world than her. She thinks about how both her father and brother are like snakes, sneaky and full of hidden motives. She didn't even try to see if Moo Kang had any signs of enduring a major surgery on his body. She wonders how long Moo Kang has been putting up with all of this, and what he really thinks beyond his calm smile. He walks up to her quietly and places his hand on hers. He looks at her and says, "I'm ready, just like you asked." Hye-jin thinks to herself, a man named Kim Moo Kang. He leans in close to her, saying he's ready, just like she told him to be. But she pushes him away, saying she needs to disinfect his wound. He winces and says, "Ouch," clearly feeling the pain. He then tells her that it hurts when she presses on his stomach. She goes ahead and disinfects the wound, focusing on fixing the bandage, but her gaze drifts down to his lower chest. Suddenly, water from his wet hair drips onto her, and she exclaims, annoyed. He looks at her and asks, "What?" then quickly apologizes. She remembers telling him to dry off before coming out and questions why he always comes out soaking wet. He shrugs and admits he knows, then playfully mimics how the water splashed onto her face. This reminds her of their honeymoon, and she thinks about how just being near him makes her nervous, like now. As he leans closer, she wonders why it keeps feeling this way. Just as he's about to kiss her, her brother bursts through the door, saying, "Hey." He asks if they have any drinks and then realizes he might be interrupting something. She snaps at him, asking if he didn't learn to knock. He mumbles an apology, saying he's sorry again, and then awkwardly asks what they were doing. Frustrated, she thinks about slapping him, but Moo Kang holds her back, telling her to stay calm. Moo Kang decides to step outside and tells her to wait. He gives her a quick kiss on the forehead before leaving. She mutters, "Whoa," realizing that family stuff always drives her crazy. She hates how things are awkward now because of her brother. Although her anger eases a little thanks to Moo Kang, she knows she can't keep leaving her family to him, so she steps out of the room. As she walks down the stairs, she notes that she's still busy with family duties. Moo Kang, who is still in the room, hopes her brother doesn't call Hye-jin sissy. Ignoring his questions, her brother wonders if he's getting involved with their family just because he and Hye-jin are in-laws. Moo Kang tries to explain that he feels upset too. Her brother complains that Moo Kang can't call him brother. Moo Kang insists that's why he said he'd call him brother, then smiles and calls him brother. He suggests they should just joke about things because, no matter what, housework is their business, and he shouldn't meddle in it, but Moo Kang decides to press on, telling him to respect his wife. Her brother gets frustrated and yells that Moo Kang keeps staring at him. She tells her brother to stop and questions whether he wants to wake their parents. She hands him a drink, reminding him to drink responsibly. He retorts that the reason he doesn't respect Moo Kang is that Hye-jin treats her brother that way, putting him in a lower position. She agrees, but tells him to lower his voice. She warns that if he wants respect, he should give it back. In her mind, she thinks that her brother is not someone to mess with. She warns him that if he acts like this again, she won't just stand by. He asks jokingly if it's okay for him to jump on it, and she replies that even if he blows up, he'll just get hurt, and she won't let him act all tough. He chuckles, finding it funny that she can't deny she's part of the Yang family. No matter how much she runs away or fights, she's still family to him. She tells him not to pick fights over nothing because it won't help. Then she suggests that she and Moo Kang should leave. As they start to walk away, her brother grabs her arm, and she calls him crazy. He covers her mouth and whispers that Moo Kang is hurt on the inside and barely realizes it. Curious, she asks how he knows this. He advises her not to trust Moo Kang too much. In the room, Moo Kang suggests that he can help dry her hair. He playfully asks if she realizes how cool she is, but she laughs and questions which part he thinks is cool because all she remembers are embarrassing moments. He brings up her recent talk with her brother, where she told him to take care of himself or else she'd bite him. She can't believe he knows she's a fighter. She asks if he's joking, and he insists he's serious, saying he's fallen in love with her again. He hugs her from behind and adds that it's true because she makes people lose their tempers. Then, he leans in and asks if they can finally do what they haven't done before, and they start kissing. She remembers their first kiss on their honeymoon, thinking it was a mistake, just like that second kiss when they were drunk in the studio. Now, as they kiss, she wonders if this moment can also be called a mistake. Every time their skin touches, her heart races. He's the man who came back with a knife, and she's struggling to believe everything he says. Her heart feels heavy, and she questions what she can do in this moment. Suddenly, Her brother's voice breaks through, asking if she's coming. She tells him not to be shy and to say it properly. She then asks how he knows that Moo Kang was attacked. He retorts, questioning if she really thinks there's anything their father doesn't know about. He reveals that they've planted people inside Moo Kang's company, and when she asks why, he insults her, saying it's because they don't know when they might get their heads back. Furious, she asks why he would do that, pointing out that Moo Kang has a relationship with their family now. He laughs, calling her naive, and asks if she actually believes in Moo Kang. He tells her that Moo Kang has even put his father in their company. She wants to know what everyone is doing behind her back. He explains that, even if he married her to see her happy, he and their family have been enemies for over 20 years. He questions whether she would really trust a family that sent her off as a daughter-in-law. She thinks back to her wedding day, and he continues, saying a fight isn't just a fight. It was a brutal dogfight that got reported in the news. He explains that many people have died without her knowledge, and even if they hold hands now, those hands are still stained with blood. He insists that if it were a mistake, he should have stabbed the closest opponent with the knife. He tells her that Gang Han and MK have a history together, so it would be a lie to say Moo Kang was attacked. He urges her to be aware that security in the CEO's office is relaxed, and he's sure Moo Kang has other plans. He tells her to pay close attention to Moo Kang's true intentions. The next morning, she reflects on how none of this marriage is going the way she hoped. A bodyguard approaches her, asking if everything is all right. She ignores him, thinking how much she hates gangsters, but now there are bodyguards everywhere. She doesn't want to say bad things about the people working for her, so she mutters that it's okay, even though things are getting harder. At the pharmacy, Dr. Lee looks at her with a sad expression and asks if she's really quitting. Hye-jin apologizes, explaining that she's changed since getting married. Dr. Lee questions if she's still the same Hye-jin they used to know. She asks how many times she can suddenly quit after returning from her honeymoon. Dr. Lee tells her it doesn't seem right and expresses confusion about what happened at home. Hye-jin offers to help with anything she can. Dr. Lee asks if Moo Kang is forcing her to do things at home, or if there's something keeping her from moving freely. Just then, Moo Kang walks into the pharmacy. Hye-jin quickly tells Dr. Lee that it's not what she thinks and explains that it's just house chores making things hard. Moo Kang greets Dr. Lee and says he's there to talk to her in person. Dr. Lee responds that it shouldn't be obsessive, then asks why he's there. Moo Kang explains that Hye-jin needs to take a break from work because of him, and he wants to discuss it with her. Dr. Lee says she doesn't have anything to say to Hye-jin's husband. Moo Kang hands her some documents, saying it's the resume of the pharmacist who will take over for Hye-jin. Dr. Lee accepts it, and he gives her his secretary's business card. He asks her to review the documents and let them know which pharmacist she prefers, assuring her that the pay is already sorted out. Before Hye-jin can respond, Moo Kang interrupts, noticing the pharmacy sign isn't lit well. He playfully asks who she likes. Hye-jin picks a name, but insists they don't have to go through all this. Moo Kang asks her to think of it as a thank you for taking care of Hye-jin, and Dr. Lee thanks him in return. Still, it feels like they'll never see each other again, and Hye-jin apologizes for saying that. Moo Kang holds her hand and asks if she will go back to work once housework is done. Hye-jin wonders when she'll be able to work again, and when they can return to their normal lives. These questions swirl in her mind as she starts her day. She opens the pharmacy, makes medicine, and remembers chatting and drinking coffee with Dr. Lee. Moo Kang appears, asking if she's very sad, and extends his hand, offering to take her home. She recalls her brother's words about Moo Kang's hidden intentions, and she reluctantly accepts, thinking to herself that she can't even say no. She feels trapped, doubting everything around her, realizing she's in a world full of lies. It's been 3 days since Hye-jin quit the pharmacy, and she feels curious about how time is passing. After the storm of emotions, the newlyweds' house is so quiet it almost feels boring. She thinks about how long it will be until Moo Kang gets home. When she was studying for her pharmacist exam, time always seemed to fly by, but now, it drags on. She receives a message from Moo Kang saying he will be a little late today. Since she suddenly quit her job, time doesn't feel like it's moving fast anymore. Bored, she considers going for a walk. Moo Kang is still working, and she feels like she's wasting her time just sitting around. Reading books or watching TV doesn't keep her entertained for long, and she realizes she doesn't really have any hobbies. She wonders if there's anything she can do to help around the house, but the workers tell her there's nothing to worry about, everything is already done, organizing, cleaning, laundry, washing dishes, and preparing meals. Even when she tries to help, they insist it's already perfectly finished. No matter where she goes, she hears someone call out "Madam," and as the sun sets, it gets chilly. Having bodyguards around all the time makes her feel uneasy. She's gotten used to it, but she doesn't like that someone is watching her every move. One of the bodyguards reminds her to take care of herself and not catch a cold, and she thanks him. It feels like every little thing she does is monitored, almost like living in a small pond where carp are fed rice. She questions if there's another way she can protect herself and ensure Moo Kang and her family are safe. Feeling determined, she decides to call Mr. Mingyu to tell him she has found a way to help. When she calls, he wonders what she's thinking. She has a favor to ask him. At his office, he asks one of the bodyguards if Hye-jin signed up for the gym today. The bodyguard confirms it's a 15-minute walk from their house. He notes that she didn't mention anything to Moo Kang about going out. Not sure if he should let her go, he finds out she worked out for over 3 hours, and is now at home sleeping. Hearing this, he instructs the bodyguard to keep a close watch on her to make sure she's safe. He feels relieved she has found something she loves, because she always seemed down after quitting her job. When he hears she's having scallop steak grilled in butter, paired with Chardonnay wine, he knows she doesn't really enjoy fancy food or alcohol. When he asks her which dress she likes, she replies she's fine with anything. He realizes she isn't into shopping either. When he asks about a movie she watched, she says it was sad. Before marriage, Hye-jin was fully focused on becoming a pharmacist, so she didn't have time for hobbies. Moo Kang has been busy trying to clean up the mess left by director Choi, so he hasn't been able to spend much time with her. Once things settle down, he plans to take her out to find what she really enjoys. Looking at a photo of her with a horse, he thinks they should go horseback riding together. He wants to see her smile more. Just then, Hye-jin walks into the office, dressed in a suit, looking confident. She calls him by his full title, MK, Urban Development CEO Kim Moo Kang, and explains that she wants to help him. She heard the secretary team directly under him is looking for new hires, and she thinks this is something she can do. As she remembers how nervous she used to be with bodyguards around, she starts to feel comfortable again. While browsing the bookshelves, she gets startled when Mr. Mingyu calls her name, and she instinctively turns and playfully attacks him. Realizing it's just him, she laughs and apologizes, saying she was a bit jumpy. He compliments her skills and admits he's impressed that she went straight for his vital point. He suggests she could be Moo Kang's bodyguard. In the office, Hye-jin explains that she wants to do her part in their marriage. He can hardly believe what he's hearing. No one has ever made such a wonderful confession to him. Feeling overwhelmed with happiness, he hugs her tightly, asking if she means it. She confirms she wants to protect him, and he feels a rush of pride. She explains that to keep him safe, she would need to quit her job and stay by his side. Moo Kang thinks this is an incredible commitment and feels lucky to hear such heartfelt words. He realizes that none of this marriage is going as he expected, and he finds himself looking forward to what's next. Meanwhile, a man in a suit is sifting through some documents, and is surprised to find Hye-jin's name on one of them. He can't believe she's really applying to work in the company. As Moo Kang walks down the stairs, he asks Secretary Park how long Hye-jin has been doing the physical test. Secretary Park responds that it's almost over. Moo Kang opens the door to the room and hears the supervisor announce that the 2 minutes are up, and Hye-jin has completed her fitness test. The supervisor praises her, saying she has a first-class score with her short round trips and sit-ups. He informs Moo Kang that the final interview with the head of the security team will start in 10 minutes. Hye-jin replies with a cheerful "all right," and Moo Kang smiles, thinking she's doing great. However, Secretary Park looks a bit worried. He asks if it's okay that the final interview is with team leader Hye-jin. He knows Hye-jin can be tough, but he also knows he won't be rude since Hye-jin is Moo Kang's wife. Just then, Hye-jin arrives, and the supervisor greets him, bowing slightly. Moo Kang wonders if Hye-jin is the new security team leader, who started last week, after the team was completely replaced due to the raid. Hye-jin asks Hye-jin if she is ready to apply. At first glance, he seems like a serious guy, not even greeting her properly. Like Moo Kang, Hye-jin thinks this is an interesting situation. Hye-jin tells her to please help him out since she's just starting, but he sounds a bit stern. He explains a scenario about a thief attacking a guard and how to subdue the thief without hitting him, asking her to repeat the instructions. Hye-jin does exactly what he says, and Moo Kang watches with a proud smile. As Hye-jin moves closer to Moo Kang, Hye-jin steps in front of him protectively. Moo Kang thinks it's kind of cute how she's trying to protect him. Hye-jin wonders if Hye-jin will come at her carelessly, or if he'll try to take her down first. She wants to be ready for either option. When she sees Hye-jin aiming at Moo Kang, she instinctively steps in to attack him. She strikes his hand to throw him off balance and hits him in the chest. He cries out in surprise, grabs her leg, and pulls her down. Hye-jin gasps, but in a flash, she pins him to the floor with her elbow. With a smile, Hye-jin mentions her name, saying she passed the test while Moo Kang maintains a serious expression. Hye-jin introduces himself, and Hye-jin responds that she knows who he is. She then asks how he's been doing. Hye-jin reveals that he is a childhood friend of hers, and they used to train together at the dojo run by his father. They met in 3rd grade, and she was the strongest in their school. He admits he lost every time they fought, and back then, with her short hair, he didn't even realize she was a girl. Curious, Hye-jin asks how many years it has been since they last saw each other. He laughs, saying he didn't expect to see her like this. Hye-jin is surprised, recalling that he was her only friend growing up. He was the one she talked to and trained with. She remembers a text he sent her years ago, asking if she was going to college, but she never replied and cut off contact. Now, she feels the need to apologize, but thinks it's not really necessary. Moo Kang seems to sense the moment and tells her she should speak her mind. Hye-jin agrees, saying she wants to tell him because he's her husband now. In her thoughts, she acknowledges that they have a lot to do together in the future, and need to be on the same path. Captain Yoon mentions her name again, prompting Hye-jin to realize how much has changed since then. Meanwhile, her brother calls, asking if things are going well for her. She has mixed feelings, she wants things to be good, but also doubts if they really are. She looks into Moo Kang's warm eyes and wishes she could believe in them completely. On his knees, Moo Kang takes her hand and smiles brightly, saying he's so happy to be her husband. Hye-jin leans in and gives him a quick peck on the cheek, telling him she'll be his bodyguard starting tomorrow. He responds with a smile, asking her to take good care of him. Hye-jin hopes she can do her job well and protect everything that's important to her, including Moo Kang. Staring at her employee ID card, she realizes it's her first one. She remembers getting her pharmacist's coat, and Dr. Lee's words about asking her grandpa for it. She wonders if she feels like a real pharmacist yet. The security office is on the 13th floor. The woman at the desk tells her if she loses her special security card, she should come see her right away. She accepts and thanks her. As she steps out, she wonders if she needs the employee ID to use the elevator, and how someone could break through this level of security. The elevator beeps and opens. She steps inside and arrives at Captain Yoon's office. Captain Yoon greets her by name and mentions that she has started work. She says hello and introduces herself as an apprentice bodyguard. He tells her she will be on probation for 3 months starting today. Before the training, he explains the schedule. He says the CEO has a construction site inspection at 2 p.m. He explains that she needs to know the regular and emergency exits, but since it's a construction site, close security is necessary. He suggests she have a light meal and wait in the office, offering her a drink. She smiles and thanks him. As he sits down with his meal, he mentions her good physical results and asks where she exercises. She tells him it's near her house. He invites her to the dojo, saying his father is curious about her. She wonders if he has told his master about her, and he confirms. She remembers how much the master liked her when she was young and how he taught her martial arts. He used to buy her tteokbokki on the way home. She asks if the tteokbokki place is still there. She thinks about her warm memories and can't believe he offers to bring her tteokbokki next time. She feels happy and wants to say hi to the master. A few minutes later, Moo Kang walks in, asking if she is eating. He says he came to eat with her before dinner, but is a bit late. She realizes she forgot about him for a moment, thinking that bodyguards usually eat together. He says it's nice because it's just the two of them, and he asks if she feels at ease. She senses he's a bit annoyed while Captain Yoon reassures them that they won't interfere with their work. Moo Kang asks about the construction site inspection at 2 p.m., mentioning another VIP will be coming. Young Hye-jin, her brother, waves at them and asks if there's anything special going on. He notices Captain Yoon and questions why he's there, teasing about his workout routine. She starts to say something, but Captain Yoon interrupts, saying private matters can't be discussed during work. He tells Hye-jin to stay calm and not get too excited by the teasing. Moo Kang jokes about how to treat Hye-jin, asking if he should treat him like an executive vice president or a brother. He then tells Hye-jin to clarify his attitude. Hye-jin brushes it off and tells his bodyguards to check the building quickly. She sighs in relief, thinking about how her brother is making her first day more difficult. The day goes as she expected, filled with her brother's harsh words towards his subordinates. She feels frustrated and has a headache. The president calls and asks her to get coffee with him. She offers to go if he tells her what he wants. He insists they go together, saying it's important for her to accompany him. She agrees. Captain Yoon, on a call, confirms something and tells the person to check on it. When Hye-jin opens the car for the president, he expresses concern. He walks up to them and asks where they are going. She explains they are going to the cafe. He says he will join them, even though the president isn't thrilled about it, knowing it's the right call. He wishes it could just be the two of them. I'm walking with the president and a bodyguard, and I notice people looking at us. I wonder why, but I guess it's because of the tall bodyguard beside me. It feels a bit tense, and I can't help but think if there are any dangerous people nearby. The president coughs and I glance back, but he just laughs and says he enjoys watching me work hard. I suggest we keep moving since we are attracting attention. When we finally reach the coffee shop, he asks if the bodyguards look hot and what drinks we want. He says he'll pay, but Captain Yoon reminds him that we shouldn't eat or drink in the same place for security reasons. The president suggests we grab coffee anyway since he doesn't have any other plans today. I'm surprised he can change his schedule like that, and he says he'll follow the rules while I call him out on it. He orders me an Americano since he knows I like coffee, and he picks apple juice for himself. Afterward, I finish preparing my daily report and give it to the manager. He thanks me but notices my expression. He asks if I expected something different, and he explains that being a bodyguard is not just about keeping someone safe, it's also about respecting their freedom. I think about how I miss our normal lives and promise to remember what he said. The president opens the door and tells me he's going to work out. I realize I value ordinary life more than anything and feel impatient about the challenges ahead, especially when it comes to protecting Moo Kang. He asks if I want to have lunch together, and I agree, but he interrupts, saying he's craving steak. At lunch, he tells me to enjoy my meal, but then he spills sauce on his shirt. He laughs it off and says he'll call Secretary Park to get a new shirt before he goes shopping. I want to do my best in my role, so at the dress shop, he holds up a nice red dress and asks if I think it would suit me. I make my decision, but keep it to myself. Later at home, he asks what's for dinner, but I say I'm full and head out to work out. He asks if I don't eat and if we can go together, but I tell him it's after work hours, so there's no need. He wonders if I'm upset, and I mutter that maybe he treats bodyguards like this all the time. I start my workout, kicking and punching the air. Captain Yoon watches, smiling as he reminds me not to put too much power into my moves. He hands me a towel and mentions that his father's student is coming to visit. I explain that I came to this gym because it reminded me of my childhood. While we share some tteokbokki, he talks about his father's desire for consistency, and I tease him that he's just like his dad. We laugh, and I challenge him to a playful fight, not as a boss and intern, but like when we were kids. I feel confident attacking rather than defending, so I plan to strike quickly. As I go for it, I think, attack after eating, but he gets me on the knee, making me lose my balance, and I fall to the ground with a gasp. He laughs and pins me down, saying he finally wins, and we lock eyes, both of us smiling. She calls out his name, and he reminds her that when making big moves, she needs to watch her opponent and use a face block for defense. He asks if she forgot that. Standing up, he offers to help her up, and she replies that she's just surprised at how close they are. He laughs and asks if they should see how far they can go today. After a bit of joking around, they decide to clean up the room. She tells him it's getting late and apologizes for not being there. She explains that she didn't leave him, she left her house because she hated it so much. She wanted to escape to a place where no one would recognize her. After finishing university, she moved to Gyeonggi-do and worked peacefully at a small pharmacy, thinking she was finally free from her family. But she realizes now that she was still under their control. Then she mentions that she is married to someone he knows. He quickly puts it together, saying, "You're married to the president." He remembers her wedding on TV and jokes about how he couldn't forget her face after seeing it. With a smile, he thanks her for telling him now, saying that no matter where she is or what she does, she will always be young Hye-jin to him. He wonders if it's truly impossible for them to be together. She reminds him that the bodyguards Moo Kang assigned are probably waiting outside. He asks if bodyguards hang around in everyday life, muttering that it might be the last time they get to talk like this. As they step outside, they see someone standing there with crossed arms. She is surprised to see him, and he mentions her name, saying she went out wearing thin clothes. He has brought a robe and insists they should go back together. She wonders if he plans to take his car and use it as an excuse for her outfit. Feeling frustrated, she eventually agrees to go home with him. He opens the car door for her, and as she gets in, she says she'll figure things out on her own. He shoots a glance at Yoon, looking a bit angry, and tells him they'll head out first. As they drive, she thinks for a moment and asks him why he's there without Secretary Park. She points out the excuses he made about her clothing and sarcastically questions if he thought she wouldn't be able to find her way home. He insists that's not the case. She continues, pointing out that he calls her at any time for anything and has her sit next to him. She confesses that she doesn't even know if she's really his bodyguard. Despite her best efforts, it feels like she's not doing her job well. She asks him if he wants her to quit. He quickly reassures her that he doesn't look down on her work and never wants her to leave. He apologizes if he upset her. He shares that it was nice having her around to protect him. He tells her how he noticed her tense posture and how it made his heart flutter. He admits he got a bit carried away thinking about her, even while working. He recalls wondering what she was eating and what she was up to, and if she regretted leaving the pharmacy. He also thinks about her interactions with Captain Yoon and wonders what they could have talked about when she was with him. He admits he cares because she seems a little too aware of Captain Yoon. She explains that he's just a friend now, and a partner and boss, but she wonders if she's too focused on him. It's tough for her to show him the secret feelings she has about Moo Kang. She feels nervous that he might find out about her fake marriage, and is embarrassed that she revealed so much to Captain Yoon. She thinks it feels like Moo Kang has gotten into her deepest feelings, making the situation even more awkward. He apologizes for any misunderstanding and suggests they go home and have a drink to unwind. Once they get home, they pour themselves some drinks. Later that night, she wakes up with a headache. A message buzzes on her phone, and she wonders who is messaging her at this hour. The message reads, "Young Hye-jin, next to Kim Moo, clinging to him, listening carefully, and observing his weaknesses. I saw you called Captain Yoon as the head of the bodyguard team, and it seems like he's covering for you." She thinks to herself that she's the only one being contacted at this time. She wonders if Moo Kang invited Captain Yoon on purpose, and what he might think. Curious about what Moo Kang is doing, she turns to look for him in bed, but can't find him. She wonders where he has gone at this late hour. At work, I feel someone place a hand on my chair. I turn around and see it's the president. He asks if I can join him for a moment because he needs to go to the archives, but he doesn't have enough hands. I agree and say we should get going. He tells me it will take some time, because he has to check through each design book from a few years ago. I ask him what kind of data he's looking for, and he admits he doesn't know the exact year he needs to check. He explains that the archives are complicated, and it's hard to find things alone. I agree that it can be confusing, and I ask if it's tough for him to check everything. He replies that it's not easy, but it's part of his job. He adds that if I look closely at the designs, I might find it interesting. I think about his word believe. In a place where nobody knows each other, it's hard to trust anyone. Even the ordinary people who come and go might be hiding their true feelings, sharpening their swords in secret. I can see things with my own eyes, but I still judge him because I wonder what kind of person he really is. I remember my brother telling me not to trust him too much. I realize I'm influenced by what others say, and I don't want to suffer because I doubt Moo Kang. I decide to ask him a question. I start by calling him president and then switch to Moo Kang. I ask him where he was this morning at 4 a.m. because I'm curious about his whereabouts. He tells me to watch my back because some files are falling. I quickly turn around, and as I do, I see him leaning towards me. He tells me he's glad I'm curious about him, but I ask if that's appropriate in this situation. He removes a paper from my head and says he had something urgent to deal with. Then he asks if I was worried about him. I point out that it was really early in the morning and ask what's going on. Just then, Secretary Park rushes in with an urgent report. Seeing us in our position, he raises an eyebrow and asks if we are okay. As I start to arrange the files on the floor, I apologize and say I'll take care of it right away. Moo Kang tells me to excuse him for a moment. I watch him leave, wondering what's going on. His expression doesn't look good, and I worry it might be about the recent attack. I think about the documents that fell and wonder if I will end up back in my old position. I can't believe I'm lost in the company at my age. My thoughts drift to Gang Hen Construction and my brother. I remember how he was introduced as Executive Director Yang Hye-eun and wonder how he's doing. Meanwhile, I overhear Moo Kang talking to someone. He tells the person to lower their voice so no one can hear them. I peek through the door and think about gang hen construction and my brother. I catch snippets of their conversation, and he asks the person what they have. He mentions that it's possible the person has joined hands with someone, but he doesn't finish his thought. Instead, he tells them to secure something first. I start to worry that my brother is up to something, especially after his last text asking about Moo Kang's weaknesses. Just then, a hand reaches out from behind me. If I move a little closer, I might hear exactly what they are discussing. It's Captain Yoon. He grabs my shoulder and asks what I'm doing. I turn around in shock and call him team leader. He says we should go outside to talk, and I agree. I tell him it was a mistake to eavesdrop. I can't believe I got caught, and I have no excuse to give. I explain that they were talking about my family. I know I shouldn't have listened in, but I couldn't help myself, so I apologize. He reassures me that there's no need to be sorry, even though I broke the rules for a bodyguard. I then ask if he's going to report me to the boss. He asks if I want to keep this from the president. I pause for a moment before asking him if this is about the recent attack. He looks surprised and asks how I know. He explains that he was instructed to investigate who was behind the crime, and that he learned about the attack when he joined the company. He talks about replacing the security team, and how the head of security needs to know the reason for the downsizing. He's been thinking about how to tell me since I'm on the security team. He says I need to join the investigation because it's all personal matters. He tells me that security can't allow outside threats and asks if I know the time I come into the company. He believes the attack must have been carried out by someone inside. I think back to my brother's words about planting people inside Moo Kang's company. It feels like a betrayal happening without anyone realizing it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the urgent report to the president, and what it means about the in-laws' relationship. I can't believe my brother could be involved in something like this, and I convince myself that it just can't be true. The attack is suspected to be done by someone inside the company. She hopes her brother isn't involved. Captain Yoon tells her he's most suspicious of Director Choi. When the chairman gave the MK City Development project to CEO Moo Kang, he appointed Director Choi to oversee it. She questions whether Director Choi could be the culprit, but doubts her brother's involvement, though it's not a safe time to be sure. She feels upset about this news and mentions that Director Choi was close to her father. Yoon agrees, explaining that Choi has been with MK since it started, which makes him think MK is a trustworthy company. MK was chosen for the housing redevelopment project because of its strong reputation. Although Choi has impressive achievements, Yoon notes that he can't let go of his old ways. Yoon hears Choi is still pushing hard for the city redevelopment project, while the president focuses more on parks and landmarks, aiming to reshape the company's image. There hasn't been much agreement on urban redevelopment, and suspicion arises that Choi may have misused some funds, leading to the president stepping in for the first time, which likely upset Choi. She remembers Moo Kang saying he needs to see things for himself, realizing he was attacked right after that. She thinks it's suspicious since Choi has seen him around. She recalls a day when Moo Kang questioned her usefulness, noting the security guard's role and their interaction with Choi, who seemed hostile. She wonders if Choi is trying to take over MK's urban development, and if Moo Kang is fighting a lonely battle. About to speak to Yoon, she explains her choice to become a bodyguard. She doesn't want to rely on others anymore, and wants to help Moo Kang. She asks Yoon what she can do. Yoon thinks she is strong and informs her that Choi will host a meeting this Friday, where she might learn more about him. She asks if she should prepare anything and if she can dress as a bodyguard. Yoon clarifies she needs to attend as Moo Kang's wife, which surprises her. She worries about Choi's plans and decides to gather information herself. Moo Kang checks in on her preparations and mentions the wedding. She admits she remembers it, but she's feeling tired. He reveals he chose her dress, and she thanks him for looking out for her. He smiles and jokes about how hard it is to pick out clothes for her, then tells her to change comfortably. Changing in Moo Kang's office feels strange to her. She worries the dress might be small, but it fits well. She thinks it's odd that Moo Kang knows her measurements better than she does. When she struggles to zip up the dress, she opens the door slightly. Moo Kang asks what's wrong, and she apologizes, saying the zipper won't go up and asks for his help. She wonders if the zipper is broken, realizing she zipped it up too tightly. He thinks it might be stuck with the lining and tells her to wait. As he checks her back, she feels nervous and tries not to think too much about it. She tells him she likes the dress he picked, even though she worried it would be a plain red dress. He admits he actually prepared a suit instead. She gets why he's so stubborn, and he says just imagining her in that dress makes him happy. Once he finishes, she thanks him, but then he hugs her from behind. She asks if he's okay, and he says she looks just like he imagined. She wonders what he imagined and thinks of him as a philologist. He shares how much he has dreamed of a day like this, with their names together, Kim Moo Kang and young Hye-jin. He thanks her for being with him, and she says acting like a wife is her duty. He tells her he has a gift and pulls out a small box. Inside is a bracelet, which he says isn't new or expensive, but is very precious to him. He puts it on her wrist and hopes she likes it. She says if it means that much to him, it's important, and asks if she can keep it. He tells her she can because she's the most important to him. They share a moment, gazing into each other's eyes. As they step out, they meet Captain Yoon. She calls him leader, and he acknowledges them, saying he's been waiting to take them to the party hall. She thinks it's strange that the director's bodyguard has taken over security since this is an official event for Moo Kang. She feels awkward, especially in heels. Yoon remarks that she doesn't look like the Hye-jin he knows. She insists she's still the same, but admits she feels different today. She thanks him, but confesses she's trembling because it's her first time at an event like this. Yoon reminds her that she once competed without hesitation, and tells her to think of this as a competition. She jokes that she just doesn't want to cause trouble. He encourages her to be brave and improvise if needed. She agrees and they fist bump. Moo Kang asks what she should improvise about, and they both say as they realize. In the car, he says they should get going because it's almost time, and she nods in agreement. Captain Yoon glances at her smiling face in the rearview mirror. When they arrive at the venue, Yoon pats her shoulder and tells her to relax and watch her step. She nods as Director Choi welcomes them inside, commenting on how beautiful she looks. He says it's probably because Moo Kang treats her well. Choi adds that a beautiful wife doesn't just stay home, she also supports her husband. She stares at him, confused, but she notices someone has been waiting for the director, Yo. Director Choi tells Moo Kang that someone has been waiting for him. Hye-jin turns around and recognizes him, it's architect Jun Sung-hyun. He greets Moo Kang as bro and they chat like old friends. Hye-jin remembers seeing him at the drugstore. Choi jokes that he doesn't need an introduction since they are close from their time in America. Jun laughs and mentions he's had heart surgery, but never brain surgery, playfully saying he doesn't remember being that close. Hye-jin wonders why they seem to dislike each other despite being acquaintances. Choi laughs and says their friendship is emotional, based on their reliance on each other during their youth. He explains they both have their own businesses in the same field, which leads to competition, but also support. They toast to that, and Jun says it's motivating to push each other forward. Hye-jin notices Moo Kang seems indifferent, but she feels honored to share the same background. Moo Kang then suggests it's time for dinner, but Choi wants to keep discussing. Hye-jin learns that Jun is in charge of all new building projects, surprising her. She realizes this architecture company is aggressively competing with Ganghan and MK, and she worries they lack morals, harming the ecosystem for their gain. Suddenly, her brother walks in, mocking the atmosphere and teasing her about looking sexy. She thinks he's rude, and he asks if he's looking at director Yang. Choi praises Hyeon's hard work and acknowledges her graceful image, which Hye-jin finds surprising. Hye-jin greets her, calling her lady, and expresses excitement to work together. Hye-jin feels sad for Hye-jin, who reminds her of their mother. Her brother throws insults, and when he raises his hand to hit her, Hye-jin steps in to stop him. Moo Kang notices and suggests they go to dinner. She agrees and thanks him, asking him to keep an eye on her brother. As they walk away, Hye-jin tells Hye-jin to come with her while Moo Kang mentions that her brother is drunk. At dinner, Hye-jin checks on Hye-jin, who smiles and compliments her, saying she's beautiful and capable. Hye-jin thinks people look good because of their clothes and tells Hye-jin that she has matured into a beautiful and peaceful woman. Hye-jin is surprised and agrees, saying she feels loved. Hye-jin asks if she trusts her husband, and Hye-jin admits they've only been married a short time, so she's still figuring it out. Though she's unsure of Hye-jin's thoughts, her mind is always on Moo Kang. She looks for him in the crowd, but suddenly realizes he's gone. Hye-jin asks what's wrong, and Hye-jin thinks to herself that he has disappeared. Feeling scared, Hye-jin stands up when she realizes Moo Kang is missing. She wonders where he went. Her sister-in-law asks what's wrong, but Hye-jin just smiles and says he's not the type to get into trouble. She thinks back to when he was right in front of her, and notes that he knows not to mess with someone stronger than him. She worries because most people at the party support Director Choi, who is suspected of being behind the attack. What if Moo Kang got attacked again? Her sister-in-law urges her to go look for him. Hye-jin confirms she's searching for her husband and promises to come back soon. As she walks around looking for Moo Kang, she wonders where to check next. She decides to look in the hallway. When she bumps into someone, she apologizes and realizes it's Captain Yoon. She asks him where Moo Kang is, and he tells her he's talking with business partners in a private room. Hye-jin wonders what kind of business requires that a bodyguard can't go in. Yoon offers to let Moo Kang know she's looking for him, but she declines. She wonders why he didn't say anything to her, and feels out of place. As she sips her wine, she finds it all annoying. Meanwhile, Jun Sung-hyun talks to a group of people, saying his goal is to build homes where people feel happy. Hye-jin feels suspicious of him, recalling how he pretended to know Moo Kang when she first met him. She notices his sharp gaze on Director Choi and wonders what his true intentions are. As she watches him, he walks away from the group. Hye-jin stands in the hallway where she last saw Moo Kang, feeling uneasy. She worries that someone might stab Moo Kang in the back. Deciding not to be passive anymore, she takes off her heels, determined to watch and figure things out for herself. She focuses on the direction Jun is heading and quietly follows him. When she reaches the door of the room where she thinks Moo Kang is, she moves closer to listen. Inside, Director Choi says he will handle things well, and that all new building is progressing quickly. The door opens slightly, and Hye-jin feels nervous, thinking she might get caught. Choi talks about how important it is to know who your supporters and traitors are. Hye-jin wonders why they are together, and where Moo Kang is. Suddenly, she realizes she needs to hide before she's seen. Just as she stands up to move, Jun tells Choi he has to leave. Hye-jin decides to slip into the next room, praying no one is there. But as she opens the door, a hand grabs her wrist and pulls her inside. She falls to the floor, surprised, and then asks Moo Kang why he's here. Moo Kang questions a man in suit if the thing he told him to prepare is still proceeding as planned. He says yes, that he already did put the checklist in the car. Then he informs him that they are strict people, so he isn't allowed to make any mistake, and he gets it. He opens the door and sees Hye-jin sitting and staring into the mirror. He tells her that they have to go. She accepts as she is also ready. He places his hand on her thigh, questions if she is nervous, and she replies that she isn't just used to it. Then he tells her to just be herself and do whatever she wants. She mentions his name, about to tell him something. His phone rings and he picks the call. He says hello to the caller and he questions how long it will take for him to get there. He states that he hasn't set off yet. Holding a knife, he questions if he hasn't set off yet, and if he isn't aware that he is hot-tempered. At his parents' house, Moo Kang's brother is carrying something as their mother asks what his father is grumbling about. While peeling an apple, their father calls Moo Kang on the phone to ask when he'll be home. When they arrive with bags, Hye-jin greets them, calling them Mom and Dad, while Moo Kang lets them know they are there. His mother smiles and welcomes them inside. His father asks if his daughter-in-law has arrived. Moo Kang's mother mentions that Hye-jin attended the party the night before. They check if she's tired, and she says not really, since all she had to do was smile. His mother laughs, saying that smiling can be tiring too. Moo Kang opens a package and tells his father he brought beef. His father excitedly asks if they should eat beef tenderloin on such a special day. Hye-jin looks at the food and asks if his mother prepared everything. His mother replies that she just made salted meat and offers her a taste. Hye-jin tries it and declares it delicious. His mother shares that her father-in-law loved that dish, so she wanted to make it for him. Hye-jin thinks how much her grandpa-in-law must have appreciated it. This reminds her of her own mother, who had to cook everything alone during special occasions. She recalls the exhaustion her mother felt and how her father would just lounge around, leading to her mother's constant nagging. The thought makes Hye-jin feel frustrated. She wonders if this is what an ideal family looks like, with everyone coming together to prepare for a special day. Her brother-in-law announces that the steamed fish is ready, mentioning that the fish store owner gave them a discount because of Moo Kang's marriage. Their father finishes peeling fruits, and their mother thanks the fish seller, curious about how he knows. Moo Kang's brother gently suggests that their mother must be tired from cooking and offers to help, but she insists she wants to show off her skills. Hye-jin stands shyly with her brother-in-law and asks if she can warm up the fish, but he tells her to leave it since their mother will handle it before serving it at the altar. He quietly watches her, making her curious about his intentions. He finally says it's magical and asks for her opinion, adding that they almost got married. Hye-jin agrees. She asks what he just said, and he responds that he had that thought in his head at the time, during the wedding ceremony, that if it wasn't Moo Kang, he would have been the one standing in that position. Then he concludes that the scene wasn't bad at all. She respectfully responds that the joke isn't funny, as she wonders what he wants to say. He asks about her married life, if Moo Kang is treating her well. She felt that he is the same type as her brother when she faced him. She responds that he always cares and takes care of her, always makes time for her, and he is very handsome. She continues that looking at his face alone makes her happy. She adds that she must be very lucky, because men like him are very rare. She notes in her thought that she is so lucky that she didn't marry someone like him. He keeps mute for a moment, then spills that the both of them are a really good match. She accepts and thanks him while turning some tea into the teacup, then concludes that he finally understood. She questions if he drinks tea, thinking that he will just take it and go away, but he decides to tell her something. He spills that when Moo Kang couldn't use glasses when he was young, because if one gives it to him he would throw it all away, and she responds that he was still a kid at that time. He moves closer to her, then asks if she knows that her husband has a wound that needs stitches, though there were more wounds on his body. He tells her to look as he pulls his shirt slightly down to reveal his chest, and looking into her eyes, he states that once someone hits, someone will be hit. He then questions the side that she thinks Moo Kang belongs to. She says hey you. Meanwhile, Moo Kang is back already. He calls him brother. He walks close to him, hugs him, then questions what the both of them are talking about, if he's talking bad about him to Hye-jin, but he questions if he admits that he's had embarrassing behavior. Meanwhile, Hye-jin wonders what the display is all about. Moo Kang questions what his brother is talking about, and Hye-jin feels confused. His brother says they are discussing Moo Kang's childhood, prompting Moo Kang to ask if he revealed anything bad about him. His brother reminds him about stealing his toys, which Moo Kang tries to brush off. He then says he'll go help their father and tells Hye-jin to relax. Moo Kang adds that talking to her makes him happy, and as he moves closer, he whispers for her to think carefully about what he said. She wonders what kind of person he truly is. As they sit together, Hye-jin asks why Moo Kang is still there since his brother is helping their father. Moo Kang replies that their mother will be back soon and encourages her to take her time. When she asks if he has a good relationship with his brother, he says they get along well, and that he often spoils him. Hye-jin thinks about her own fights with her brother and wonders if Moo Kang and his brother have ever quarreled. Moo Kang says they've never fought since his brother is always condescending. He shares that he was often sick as a child, which makes Hye-jin hope their relationship isn't too deep. She recalls a moment when Moo Kang offered to help and realizes nothing serious seemed to happen between them. She thinks about what Kim Man-soo might be planning, remembering a man asking Moo Kang about marriage, and his reply about meeting his destiny. She reflects on his words about being her husband and how he treats her well. The mention of Moo Kang's scar troubles her, but she decides not to dwell on Man-soo's plans anymore. As they prepare to leave her in-laws' house, her father-in-law thanks them for their hard work and tells them to be careful. Hye-jin offers to help clean, but he reminds her they have work tomorrow. She says goodbye, and they head to the car. In the car, Moo Kang asks what she's thinking about. She tells him it's nothing, just thoughts about his warm family. He notes they've talked a lot, and as he begins to say something, she hears he can also be her husband echoing in her mind. Moo Kang then tells her to rest since there's much to do tomorrow. She jokingly reminds him that she is his bodyguard, and he laughs, saying he will request her help again tomorrow. The weather is really nice today. Moo Kang says it feels like they are going on a picnic, not visiting a construction site, then questions if bodyguard Yang thinks so, and she reminds him that she can't chat while on duty. However, smelling the scent in the wind, seeing the maple leaves mixed with yellow and red makes Hye-jin feel lighter. In the office, Captain Yoon asks about the party, if there's the information they need, and she informs him that she saw Director Choi and Jun Sung-hyun of All New Building met privately, that they looked pretty close, then questions why they have such a close relationship. He spills that Jun Kwang-in, the father of Jun Sung-hyun, has known Director Choi for many years. Now they seem to have drawn a line, but the sneaky relationship is definitely not clean. He informs her that their director Moo Kang is also watching them, and she questions if it is so. She wonders when, who and how is the relationship, because she doesn't know those things at all. She wonders what Moo Kang heard when he was in that room, if he eavesdropped, how he did something like that without blinking an eye, and her own mind was burdened with those things until the next morning. Now, she naturally wants to go to the countryside to play. He says it looks like she is going for a work. She wants him to repeat what he said, but he tells her that he said she's cute. In her mind she tells herself to focus, and that she is here to work. A man states that the safety inspection on the rooftop has been completed and requests to lead them up. As they walk up the stairs, he turns around, stretches his hand towards her, questions if she doesn't go before him, then requests to take her hand if not, and the man states that he is really gentle. Here they are, she finds it so interesting, while he states that he worked hard to preserve this view, and she says that this landscape is worth it. So he suggests that they should stay here for one night. The man informs them that to adjust the size of the gallery's window, they need to check the amount of sunlight entertaining his time frame, states they will observe from morning to evening today, then suggests that they stay here for one day, that it will be more exact if they check it twice when the sun rises. He states that this is the part of the job that the investor requires. Furthermore, he adds that for the time being, he can't go down from here. He informs them that rest and essential equipment will be prepared, then he gives Hye-jin some clothes and she accepts it. Moo Kang questions what's wrong, and if she doesn't like spending the night here. However, he tells her that he thinks it's fine and it's like going on a honeymoon again. He tells everyone to go home and rest because it's late already, then asks if Captain Yoon will use the room over there. He accepts to use it, then questions if he needs anything else, and he says no, that his wife here is enough. He says she will protect him all night, seek confirmation, and she affirms. He asks if she wants to take a bath first, She says yes while staring at Captain Yoon and he bows as he walks away. Captain Yoon and Kim Moo Kang. She has to sleep next to them tonight. She finds it so inconvenient. She has never worried like this before. She thinks she wouldn't have to worry about this, if only Captain Yoon doesn't know that they are husband and wife. He questions if she would like a drink. If so, they wouldn't have arranged the room this weirdly. She says it's okay as he pours drink for her. She thinks she won't be able to sleep if she doesn't drink one. They both cheer and she sips hers, then she questions why he is staring at her like that, and he says that he is her. Then she tells him that it's okay and he should continue to do it if he doesn't want to tell her. However, he states that he is really contemplating her. So he decides to look at her a little closer. She says whatever and he laughs. He then states that it's because he is missing that day, the honeymoon. Listening to his warm voice, the memory of that day is gradually appearing in her head. She recalls the beach waves crashing, and the beautiful sunset on Jeju Island. The moment she and Moo Kang sat together and drank wine, hoping that they would stay together forever. Time seemed to stop at that moment, a season had already passed. She wonders if he knows he is no different from then, but she has changed a bit. At first she was wary, then she became his partner. She recalls the moment they kissed at the party. She doesn't know since when she was touched. Once again receiving comfort from him, which her family has never given to her, she considers it a feeling she can't define. Love has arisen in the relationship between the two of them. She thinks to herself that she is touched just like him. Then she tells him to stop drinking, that she has to go to bed, and he should take a shower soon. But she thinks now isn't the time. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated.